Chapter 555. Chu Xiu's understanding of martial arts had always been very extreme. For Chu Xiu, martial arts were just a tool for him. Since it was a tool, it had to listen to its master completely. Therefore, whether it was the 3 cuts of Avicii, which contained extreme negative emotions, or the Sky Demon Dance, which contained the surging devil chi, none of them could really affect Chu Xiu. But now, the demon knife that Chu Xiu had gotten his hands on had a greed that went straight to the heart. It had triggered countless desires and inner demons, and almost made Chu Xiu lose control. It could be said that only those who had abandoned the 7 emotions and 6 desires, and tempered their will like steel could completely resist the influence of this knife. But if anyone could truly abandon the 7 emotions and 6 desires, then such a person could no longer be considered a human, but a god. Perhaps even Zhongxian could not do this. Chu Xiu had greed, and his greed was very strong. When he saw something good, he wanted to take it. When he saw something good, he wanted to take it. Chu Xiu had everything that an egoist would have. Therefore, his greed continued to grow in the knife. When the knife came down, it was like a whale swallowing the world, and the knife light swept through everything. Su Xing's expression suddenly changed when he saw that saber strike. That power swallowed everything. When the knife came down, it did not tear apart his Buddha flame gang qi. Instead, it swallowed it up, and its power grew stronger and stronger. It turned the opponent's defensive power into its own offensive power. Xu Xing had never seen such a strange and terrifying knife. In a hurry, Xu Xing formed the diamond seal with his hand, and golden light flowed around his body. He wanted to use his physical strength to resist the knife. He put his hands together, and the golden Buddha light bloomed. But under the knife, everything was swallowed up. As long as it was gang qi, it did not matter whether it was Buddha or devil. There was a loud bang, and Xu Xing was directly hit by the knife. He spat out blood and flew away. His body smashed into the tower, and he fell to the outside world. The strange demon knife swallowed everything. After sending Xu Xing flying, it was still not satisfied. It even took the initiative to devour Chu Xiu's qi and blood to attack again. But at this time, the glass golden thread goo in Chu Xiu's heart released strands of golden threads that seeped into Chu Xiu's mind, and temporarily restored Chu Xiu's clarity. Looking at the black, long, and hideous knife in his hand, Chu Xiu quickly put it back into the scabbard, breathing heavily. If not for the glass golden thread goo releasing power to restore Chu Xiu's clarity, Chu Xiu would not have been able to resist the greedy power. He would have offered his qi and blood to the knife to continue killing Xing. To be honest, Chu Xiu had never seen such a strange knife. It simply hurt others first before hurting himself. That blade could trigger the greed in a person's heart. Even if Chu Xiu's willpower was strong enough, his heart was instantly penetrated by that blade, and he was completely covered by greed. Of course, this was also related to Chu Xiu using the soul-destroying arrow earlier, which consumed all his mental power. If his mental power had been maintained at its peak state, he would not have been hit so easily. But although the demon knife was strange, its power was really strong to the extreme. It was able to seriously injure Xu Xing with one strike. Judging from its level, it had even reached the level of a divine weapon. At this time, Chu Xiu did not continue to delay. After putting away the knife, Chu Xiu directly turned around and fled. He did not even care about the few levels of the Black Demon Tower above that he had not explored. It was time to stop. Greed did not end well. At this time, the people in the outside world were still looking at the power fluctuations coming from the Black Demon Tower, and exclaiming in admiration. Although they could not see the scene inside, they could tell how intense the battle was just by listening to the violent power fluctuations. Lin Yi was indeed very strong. He could actually fight with a martial Dao master, who had been famous for a long time to this extent. At this time, the Black Demon Tower split open, and a figure was blasted out. Everyone thought it was Lin Yi, but when they saw the white monk robe, they realized that the person who was blasted out was actually Master Xu Xing. Moreover, Master Xu Xing did not look good at the moment. His aura was somewhat weak, and there was even blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. What's going on? Lin Yi was actually able to seriously injure Master Xu Xing. Is his strength also so terrifying? After seeing that Master Xu Xing was seriously injured, Zhongxian did not continue to fight with Lu Fengxian. Instead, he directly went to help Master Xuxing up and let him recover from his injuries. LV Fengxian stared at the other side of the Devil Pagoda. He could see the fleeing silhouettes. With such a distance, Grandmaster Xuxing and the others wouldn't be able to catch up. Hence, LV Fengxian didn't wish to continue fighting. He retracted his unparalleled divine weapon. However, LV Fengxian's countenance instantly turned dispirited as his aura fell to the extreme. Yan Fian hurriedly ran over and asked, "Young Master Lu, are you okay?" Lu Fengxian shook his head. "I'm fine. I just consumed too much energy." At this time, Zhong Xian helped Xuxing up and asked, "Chief, what's going on? No matter how strong Lin Yi is, it's impossible for him to injure you like this in a short time." Xuxing gritted his teeth. Of course, Lin Yi doesn't have this strength. However, he took 7 demonic sabers from the Black Demon Tower. Those demonic sabers may be at the level of a divine weapon. They have the evil effect of devouring qi. I was caught off guard and was injured by his sneak attack. As soon as they heard Xuxing's words, the eyes of everyone present immediately turned red. Those were divine weapons. The warriors present all had powerful backgrounds. Even if some of them were rogue cultivators, they were also rogue cultivators with strength and background. It was very easy for them to get their hands on divine weapons. However, divine weapons were precious treasures for anyone and any sect. Unfortunately, although they were the first to discover the Black Demon Tower, the treasures inside had been taken away by Lin Yi. How hateful. Zhong Xian did not ask anything else. He just said in a low voice, "Are we still going to chase after him?" Xuxing snorted coldly. Although he was somewhat unwilling, he still said, "There's no need to chase after him. Lin Ye's speed is not slow. We can't catch up. Moreover, in Xiaofan Heaven, I must maintain my peak state. Zhong Xian, help guard me. We'll set off after I recover from my injuries." Zhong Xian supported Xuxing to the side and stood beside him to guard him. Given Zhong Xian's strength, even a martial arts master would not be able to get past him and sneak attack Xuxing. The others present looked at each other. This time, they did not continue to fight. Instead, they all ran to the Black Demon Tower, which had almost completely collapsed. Just now, Lin Yi had only taken the divine weapon, but there should be other good things in such a large Black Demon Tower. Since Lin Yi did not have the chance to take them away, they might be able to pick up some leftovers. Yan Fian and Lu Fengxian did not participate in the fight. Moreover, with Lu Fengxian's current state, he could not do anything. "Young Master Lu, find a place to recover from your injuries first. I'll guard you," Yan Fian said. Yan Fian was sincere. After all, Lu Fengxian had just saved her. Lu Fengxian thought about it, then shook her head and said, "Thank you for your kindness, Miss Yan. Time is tight in Xiaofan Heaven. I can find a hidden place by myself." In fact, Lu Fengxian had a good impression of Yan Fian. Although Yan Fian and Chu Xiu had some unpleasantness when they first met, in Lu Fengxian's opinion, that was a matter between sections. The enmity from back then had already been resolved by him. It was not easy for a woman like Yan Fian to be ranked in the top 10 of the Dragon and Tiger leaderboard. However, Lu Fengxian was certain that after Chu Xiu escaped, he would definitely be waiting for him ahead. Therefore, it was not good for him to be with Yan Fian at this time. Therefore, after speaking, Lu Fengxian immediately left. Yan Fian wanted to say something, but in the end, she did not say it. Lu Fengxian kept walking towards the east. After walking for about 10 miles, he indeed saw Chu Xiu waiting for him on a cliff. Taking off his mask, Chu Xiu said, "I'm sorry, Brother Lu. I hid it from you for so long." Lu Fengxian shook his head and said, "Everyone has their own secrets. Moreover, even though Brother Chu didn't tell me your true identity, you didn't intentionally hide it from me either. Otherwise, I wouldn't have recognized you just now." Being friends with Lu Fengxian was a very simple matter. This was because Lu Fengxian never considered your identity, your status, and other messy things. She only looked at you and whether you were qualified to be friends with her. Therefore, the good friends that Lu Fengxian made in the Northern Yan, although they were all rogue cultivators, had different personalities. There were righteous path, demonic path, and evil path. Chu Xiu knew Lu Fengxian's character, so he didn't say much. He just took out a bottle of elixirs and said, "Brother Lu, You've overdrawn your strength. Let's see if there are any elixirs suitable for you. These pills were all taken out by Chu Xiu from the Black Demon Tower just now. 10,000 years ago, they should all be treasures. But after 10,000 years, it was still necessary to see if they had passed their expiration date. Nothing could last forever, let alone something like an elixir. Therefore, when the majority of sects were refining pills, they would specifically indicate the time limit for which the pills could be stored. Some pills themselves were made of special materials, so they could be preserved for a very long time. In addition, those sects would also inscribe some formations on the pill bottles, which could also extend the expiration date of the pills. But the majority of pills obviously could not last for such a long time. Chu Xiu and LV Fengxian opened the bottles of the elixirs one by one. Most of the elixirs had already turned into a pool of medicinal mud or dregs, without any medicinal potency. Chu Xiu had taken away dozens of bottles of pills, but only 3 of them could be used. 2 of them were for cultivation, and 1 of them could be used for healing. LV Fengxian's injuries weren't too serious. His main problem was that he had overdrawn his strength. Thus, after taking the pill, he was able to recover in just a few hours. Brother Liu, your weapon has been destroyed, so it's best not to fight for the time being. I will see if there is halberd in Xiaofan heaven, so I can help you grab one. Chu Xiu already knew the power of the demon god unparalleled halberd. This divine weapon was not suitable for normal use at all. For Lu Fengxian, without a weapon, his strength would drop by at least 30%. Chapter 556. Lu Fengxian suddenly had a very strange feeling. Chu Xiu had changed his identity, and even his temperament and way of doing things had changed. Although Chu Xiu was unscrupulous in doing things before, it was not as simple, violent, overbearing, and direct as he was now. Lu Fengxian quickly shook her head and said, "No need, I still have weapons here." As she spoke, LV Fengxian took out 5 heavenly halberds from her secret spatial box. They were all 5th Revolution or 6th Revolution precious weapons, and their grades were not low. Chu Xiu was stunned for a moment and said, "Where did you get so many halberd swords?" Lu Fengxian scratched her head and said, "They were all given to me by Senior Chen of the World Alliance. There are many halberd swords in the World Alliance's arsenal, but there are not many in the World Alliance who use halberd, so Senior Chen gave them all to me. I originally wanted to refuse, but Senior Chen said that it is impossible to take back what he gave out, so I could only accept it." Hearing this, Chu Xiu couldn't help but shake his head. Chen Qingdi really valued Lu Fengxian. Those who didn't know would think that Lu Fengxian was his disciple and Xie Xiaolu was an outsider. "By the way, Brother Chu, are you going to use this identity as a demonic cultivator from now on?" Lu Fengxian asked. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "In Xiaofan heaven, the identity of a demonic cultivator is more useful than the identity of a righteous cultivator. Moreover, no one knows about our relationship. Although we can't work together openly, we can secretly help each other in a chaotic battle, just like what happened just now." In fact, it was a little dangerous for Lu Fengxian to attack just now. If it was not Zhong Xian but another martial Dao grandmaster, Lu Fengxian's actions would be easily suspected. A newly promoted expert on the Longhu list suddenly jumped out to challenge a martial Dao grandmaster. He was either out of his mind or plotting something. Due to Zhong Xian's status as the second ranker on the Dragon and Tiger leaderboard, he had been challenged by many people. Hence, it was normal for Lu Fengxian to step out to challenge him. This way, no one would suspect anything. Lu Fengxian nodded and said, "If that's the case, then I'll go first. You and I, one in the open and one in the dark, will act according to the situation." After the discussion, Lu Fengxian did not delay and left first. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, Lu Fengxian and Chu Xiu had to avoid appearing at the same time in the Xiaofan world. It was just right for them to appear one after the other. After Lu Fengxian left, Chu Xiu took out the animal skin book he had obtained earlier, and carefully looked at it while recovering his mental strength. In fact, Chu Xiu wanted to study the 7 demonic blades more, but those things were too evil. Before figuring out their details, Chu Xiu did not dare to use them. The 7 demonic blades looked exactly the same, and their hilts were the same long and narrow. The only difference was that different patterns were engraved on the hilts. They seemed to be words, but they were a type of words that Chushio had never seen before. Therefore, after observing them once, Chushio did not continue to study the 7 blades. Instead, he carefully read the animal skin book. After reading the entire book, Chushio also let out a long sigh. There was a faint hint of excitement in his eyes. He had picked up a treasure this time, although it was a very troublesome treasure. This book was not a cultivation method, but a notebook that recorded the ins and outs of the 7 blades. The person who had forged them in the past was a high-ranking member of the Black Demon Tower. This person's name was unknown, but what he was best at was not the martial way, but refining and other miscellaneous things. This master refiner of the Black Demon Tower had accidentally obtained a remnant scroll of a supreme blade technique that only had one move. This powerful blade technique had the power to destroy heaven and earth in ancient times. It was divided into 7 moves, but every person who learned this blade technique did not have a good ending. It was as if this blade technique was born with a curse, and its inheritors all died a horrible death. The master refiner of the Black Demon Tower was not good at the martial way, and he had no interest in this cultivation method. He did not cultivate the only move, and instead, he used the inspiration that this supreme blade technique gave him to refine the 7 demonic blades. The power of this supreme blade technique was shocking, and it drew upon the power of heaven and earth. The master refiner of the Black Demon Tower clearly did not have that much power, so he took a different path and did not integrate the power of heaven and earth into the blade. Instead, he integrated the 7 human emotions: greed, anger, infatuation, hatred, love, evil, and desire. Human strength could not be compared to the power of heaven and earth, but once a person's emotions were exerted to the extreme, their power was also abnormally terrifying. It was just like the greedy blade that Chushio used before. The greedy emotion directly eroded Chushio's will and devoured everything. It was incomparably terrifying. However, what was even more terrifying was the process that the master refiner of the Black Demon Tower used to refine these 7 blades. The 7 demonic blades needed to integrate human interests, so the most important material was people. It was recorded in the notebook that the master refiner of the Black Demon Tower used the power of the Black Demon Tower to capture countless people and filter out the 99 people with the strongest greed. The same was true for the other 6 emotions. Using human blood and human souls as materials, and integrating them into the 7 demonic blades caused the 7 demonic blades to be completely integrated with 7 kinds of emotions. It could be said to be incomparably domineering. If the user could not suppress these 7 kinds of emotions, using this blade would even harm others and oneself. Therefore, these 7 demonic blades could not be considered divine weapons because their insides were filled with extreme emotions, so it was impossible for them to give birth to an artifact spirit. However, their power was extremely powerful, at least far exceeding that of almost all precious weapons. Even Chushio's heavenly demon dance was only superior in terms of sturdiness, but it could not compare to them in terms of power. At the end of the notebook, the master refiner of the Black Demon Tower used the skin of a flood dragon and the demonic blood of an expert to make this scabbard to suppress the 7 demonic blades. Otherwise, no one would be able to touch this thing. He was also preparing to join forces with several experts of the Black Demon Tower to create a demonic technique to match the 7 demonic blades. After all, the side effects of these 7 demonic blades were too great. Although their power was astonishing, once used it would harm others and oneself, and the user would also be affected by the extreme emotions within. It was necessary to create a cultivation method to channel and suppress it. Unfortunately, at the end of the notebook, it seemed that something urgent had happened, so there was a gap in the record, and there was no more. According to Chushio's guess, it should be related to something like the Great Calamity of Antiquity, which caused the research to be interrupted. Chushio stroked his chin and looked at the 7 demonic blades with a strange look in his eyes. This was definitely a good thing. It was not a divine weapon, but it was better than a divine weapon. However, the side effects were a bit big. If one was not careful, their mind would be affected by the emotions. If it was light, they would fall into madness, and if it was serious, their state of mind would even be destroyed. Therefore, the master refiner of the Black Demon Tower had to temporarily seal it and wait until he had researched a cultivation method to match it before using it. Now that there was no cultivation method, Chu Xiu could forcibly use it and try to suppress it in the simplest and crudest way. Chu Xiu had already used greed before, but at that time, Chu Xiu's mental power was already exhausted, so he had no resistance. But in the end, he still relied on the power of the glass golden thread goo to regain consciousness. Now that Chu Xiu's mental power had recovered and he had the glass golden thread goo as his trump card, he could use the 7 demonic blades in battle. As long as he didn't use it consecutively, it should be fine. Thus Chu Xiu focused and calmed himself. He slowly grasped the hilt of greed's blade and slowly pulled it out. In an instant, an extreme greed shrouded Chu Xiu, causing Chu Xiu's eyes to turn red. However, at that instant, Chu Xiu's mental energy suddenly erupted. The Great Mental Demon Rotation Technique and the Great Soul Displacement Technique were executed to their limits by Chu Xiu. Only then did he manage to barely suppress the greed. Greed let out a long cry as if it was resisting, but under the pressure of Chu Xiu's mental power, it finally completely surrendered. The endless greed only remained on the blade, and didn't continue to corrode Chu Xiu. After putting greed back into the scabbard, Chu Xiu couldn't help but let out a long sigh. The mental power needed to suppress this blade was too much. Even he couldn't bear it. Without a cultivation method to match it, Chu Xiu could only use the crudest method to suppress it. According to the runes recorded in the notebook, Chu Xiu found the hatred blade and pulled it out. In an instant, extreme negative emotions erupted. Hate heaven, hate earth, hate others, hate himself, hate. 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 This time, Chu Xiu wasn't eroded by the hatred and calmly put the hatred blade back into the scabbard. Previously, Chu Xiu had already cultivated the 3 blades of Avicii to the extreme. Although this blade technique was of the demonic path, the extreme emotion contained within was also hatred. Perhaps Chu Xiu was already used to suppressing the power of the 3 blades of Avicii, so it was much easier for Chu Xiu to use the hatred blade, which had the same source of power as the 3 blades of Avicii. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something and carefully fumbled over the notebook. It was written in the notebook that the master refiner of the Black Demon Tower was inspired to refine the 7 demon blades because he had obtained the incomplete move of a supreme blade technique. So where is the incomplete technique now? Based on habit, the incomplete technique would definitely be placed in a place where he could see it often. So it was very likely to be in the notebook. But if the incomplete technique was placed somewhere else, would he have to return to the Black Demon Tower? That place would probably have been ransacked long ago. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly paused. On the cover page of the notebook, Chu Xiu felt a slight strangeness. He poured his qi into it, and a blood-colored picture faintly emerged from the cover page. The material was incomparably ancient, and there were even some places that were on the verge of breaking. This was why the master refiner of the Black Demon Tower sealed it in the notebook for safekeeping. On the cover, simple and unadorned characters faintly appeared. It was called Heaven Devouring 7 Great Limits. Chu Xiu's gaze slid down. He only glanced at the blade technique before he instantly spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 557. Chu Xiu had seen the backlash of a cultivation method, and Chu Xiu had also seen the backlash of a weapon. However, Chu Xiu had only roughly glanced at the words on it, and he was immediately attacked by the power in it. This kind of thing was simply unheard of. The backlash was so powerful. What level was this cultivation method? Was it a supreme cultivation method or a legendary peerless divine skill? Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Chu Xiu condensed the mental strength that he had just recovered, and he looked at the saber technique again. Chu Xiu was just careless for a moment, and he was suddenly attacked by the impact. He did not expect the incomplete saber technique to have such power. At this moment, Chu Xiu condensed all of his mental strength. If he could not even see the incomplete saber technique, this cultivation method would be a little too crazy. In the instant that Chu Xiu's gaze landed on the cultivation method, an ancient and desolate aura surged into Chu Xiu's mind. It was majestic, but at the same time, it was extremely violent. At the same time, countless information also surged into Chu Xiu's mind. If Chu Xiu's current mental strength was not strong enough, even comparable to a martial Dao master, Chu Xiu's mental strength would have been directly damaged. At this moment, Chu Xiu could no longer see anything else, and there was only a vision that kept reappearing in his mind. It was a blurry figure that resembled both a god and a devil. He held an evil saber that seemed to be made out of white bones. With a single slash, mountains collapsed and prisons split, rocks and ravines split. Everything in front of him collapsed in that one slash. In an instant, mountains and rivers were shattered. This was the pinnacle of power. It was a simple slash, but it contained a kind of rule, a kind of power rule, a kind of rule that Chu Xiu could not understand. Putting away the Gang Qi, the cultivation method was hidden in the animal skin record again. At this time, Chu Xiu's face was already pale, and the mental strength that he had just recovered was completely overdrawn. This was a very terrifying saber technique, so terrifying that although Chu Xiu had finished reading it, he was not even sure if he could successfully cultivate it, because some of the things in it were beyond his understanding. Some of the artistic conception in this saber technique was somewhat similar to Chen Qingdi's martial Dao, but Chu Xiu could understand Chen Qingdi's martial Dao, and could even comprehend some unique things from it. But now Chu Xiu really did not have the confidence to cultivate this saber technique. Xiaofan Sky was not a place to cultivate for the time being, and Lu Fengxian should have walked a distance at this time. Chu Xiu also hurriedly replenished his mental strength, ready to set off. The 7 demon sabers were carried on Chu Xiu's back. Although these 7 sabers were hidden dangers, with Chu Xiu's current strength, it was not a problem for him to use the hate saber, exert all his mental strength to suppress, and use the greed saber to slash with a saber. As for the other 5 sabers, Chu Xiu was not very sure what was going on. Just as Chu Xiu was recovering his strength, Lu Fengxian had already walked a long way. He did not know that Chu Xiu had made a mistake again, and he thought that Chu Xiu was secretly following him. At this time, there were waves of power fluctuations in front of them, so powerful that it made Lu Fengxian's heart palpitate. When he walked over to take a look, he saw that it was a valley, but there were dozens of people gathered in the valley, 3 of whom were martial Dao masters. Lu Fengxian's arrival attracted the attention of some people. Some of these people had experienced the battle in the Black Demon Tower just now, but they did not participate in plundering the ruins of the Black Demon Tower. So when Lu Fengxian and Chu Xiu recovered their strength, they had already come here. This group of people had been promoting the battle before. Although the main point was that Lin Yi, the hero of the demonic path, had seriously injured the head of the Dharma court of the Great Light Temple, Su Xing. It was also very shocking that Lu Fengxian could fight with Zhongxian to such an extent when she had just stepped into the realm of unity of heaven and man. Therefore, there was even a slight commotion when they saw Lu Fengxian at this time. "Brother Lu, I didn't expect you to be so fierce. I'll spar with you another day. Don't worry, there's no need to show mercy, the fiercer the better." Luo Feiheng came over from the side, and looked at Lu Fengxian with a strange expression. Compared to Chu Xiu and the others, Luo Feiheng actually met Lu Fengxian last, so he was still a little unfamiliar with Lu Fengxian. In the beginning, Luo Feiheng only felt that this person was very good, and it would not be a loss to be friends with him. Secondly, he felt a little jealous. Why was a man so good-looking? Although Luo Feiheng didn't act like a woman most of the time, in fact, she was still a woman, and a beauty at that. Therefore, she was very concerned about this kind of thing. But now, she actually heard that Lu Fengxian was able to withstand dozens of moves from Zhongxian, and even used the unparalleled divine weapon to repel Zhongxian. This kind of achievement was enough to raise Lu Fengxian's position on the Longhu list. Lu Fengxian smiled bitterly and said, "Miss Luo, don't mess around." Luo Feiheng patted Lu Fengxian's chest and said, "Who's messing around with you? I'm telling the truth. Also, don't call me Miss Luo, just call me Feiheng. It's weird to hear you call me Mississippi. If you call me Miss now, what will you call me when I get married in the future? A wife or a mistress?" Lu Fengxian was stunned. It was normal to call someone Mississippi. Moreover, after getting married, one would naturally call someone Madam. Who would call someone like that? What was this Luo Feiheng thinking all day long? Moreover, there was something that Lu Fengxian didn't say. With Luo Feiheng's character, she didn't think that Luo Feiheng would get married one day. Seeing that the topic was getting more and more off topic, Lu Fengxian pouted towards the direction of the valley and said, "What are you guys waiting for?" Luo Feiheng shrugged and said, "There is a restriction inside. Several Unity of Heaven and Man realm martial artists can't open it even if they work together." In the end, a few martial masters came, and they are studying how to open the restriction. We, the weaker martial artists, can only stand here and wait for the restriction to be opened. Then we will take a look inside and see if we can get some soup. By the way, Brother Lu, did you see Chu Xiu and the others? LV Fengxian hesitated for a moment and said, "No, but according to the direction we planned before, we will definitely be able to run into Brother Chu and Brother Xia." Lu Fengxian wasn't sure how much trust Chu Xiu had in Luo Feiheng, so he didn't tell the truth. Moreover, it was not suitable to tell the truth in public. Luo Feiheng didn't suspect anything. She and Lu Fengxian stood there and chatted while waiting for the martial masters to open the restriction. At this moment, 3 martial masters were studying the restriction in front of the valley. However, there was only one person who was doing it. It was an old Taoist from the real martial sect. Almost all of the 3 sects of Tao sect were good at formations. The old Taoist of the true martial sect had white hair and a face full of wrinkles. He looked sleepy as he slowly combed the formation patterns. His slow look made a strong man in armor beside him, who had a strong body and a curly beard, anxious. "Old Taoist Guangning, can you hurry up? If you continue to dawdle, you will still be here breaking the formation when the others have already searched the entire ruins." The martial artist who spoke was a martial Dao grandmaster from the White Tiger Hall, Bloody Blaze Yu Qifeng. His position in the White Tiger Hall was not low. He was an expert second only to the White Tiger Hall's chief hallmaster. Now that the White Tiger Hall was cooperating with the Eastern Qi Imperial Court, Yu Qifeng was even given the position of general in the Eastern Qi military. Of course, this general was only in name, and he didn't have any soldiers under him. That Taoist Guangning slowly stopped and slowly raised his head, as if he was preparing something. This made Yu Qifeng extremely anxious. Just as he was about to urge him, that Taoist Guangning slowly said, "You think I'm slow? If you can, then go ahead. This restriction array has a self-destruct function. Once you attack it forcefully, the force will exceed the load of the array, and the protective array will immediately turn into a self-destruct array. By then, don't blame me for destroying everything inside." After such a long time, old Taoist Guangning squeezed out such a sentence. It almost made Yu Qifeng choke to death. At this moment, a middle-aged man in a golden robe standing beside them said, "Yu Qifeng, don't disturb Taoist Guangning. The more you talk, the slower he is." This middle-aged man was Huangfu Weiming, the head of the Huangfu clan in Pingyao Yanxi. He wasn't famous in the martial world. The Huangfu clan used to be glorious. At its peak, it was ranked second only to the Shangshuaying clan among the 9 great families. However, in recent years, the Huangfu clan had declined. However, the Huangfu clan was smart enough to keep a low profile even though they had declined. They never caused trouble, and only stayed in a corner of Yanxi. When they were strong enough, they would begin to expand. Yu Qifeng stood aside gloomily and didn't say anything. Of course, it was useless for him to say anything. In Xiaofan Heaven, the warriors at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm fought to the death. In fact, for people at the level of martial Dao grandmasters like them, as long as there was no great enmity between them, they would usually cooperate. That was because most of the martial arts grandmasters had experienced the Xiaofan Heaven at least once. They who came from big sects had already entered it once before they became grandmasters. Therefore, they wouldn't be so aggressive when they entered it for the second time. Among these 3 people, the real martial arts sect was in Eastern Qi, and was worshipped as the national religion by the Eastern Qi imperial family. They were very respected. Now White Tiger Hall was also considered as a member of the Eastern Qi imperial court. Therefore both parties just quarreled. For the sake of the Eastern Qi imperial court, they wouldn't fight. As for the Huangfu clan in Pingyao Yanxi, they had always kept a low profile, and didn't have any great hatred with either party. Therefore, the 3 of them could coexist peacefully. After another half a day, more and more martial artists gathered in the valley. Everyone was waiting for the ruins in the valley to open. Neither Taoist Guangning nor Huangfu Weiming were overbearing people. Therefore, they didn't drive these martial artists away. Since they didn't say anything, Yu Qifeng naturally wouldn't say anything either. At the same time, Chu Xiu also arrived at the valley. When the people present saw Chu Xiu, they immediately whispered to each other. Chapter 558. There weren't many outstanding martial artists at Unity of Heaven and Man who could fight against a martial arts master. The battle between Lin Yi and Nie Renlong was already known to the world. Lin Ye's identity allowed him to enter the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. Now that Lin Yi had severely injured Great Light Temple's Dharma Institute's chief, Master Xuxing, it was really something that attracted most people's attention. Although it was rumored that Lin Yi was only able to injure Xuxing because of an external object. Even if it was an external object, it was still a display of strength. Now that Lin Yi appeared here with 7 blades on his back, the degree of fear he gave off was no less than the 3 martial Dao Grand Masters before him. Luo Feiheng pinched his chin and said, "Why do I feel that this Lin Yi is a little familiar? Where have I seen this guy before?" Lu Fengxian glanced at Luo Feiheng and thought to herself, "Are all women's instincts so terrifying?" However, Lu Fengxian coughed and said, "It must be an illusion. This group of people from demonic sects all dress the same. They are all so mysterious." At that moment, the 3 martial arts masters looked at Chu Xiu subconsciously. If it were other martial artists at Unity of Heaven and Man, they naturally wouldn't pay attention to him. However, this person was an outstanding martial artist in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, and had severely injured Xuxing. In their eyes, Chu Xiu was no different from a martial arts master of the same level. Yu Qifeng looked at Chu Xiu and said to Taoist Guangning, "Old Taoist, this kid is an outstanding character from the hidden demon lineage. Aren't you going to take care of him later?" Taoist Guangning said slowly while breaking the formation. "There are so many demonic sects in the world, but there's only one in the real martial arts sect. How can I take care of them? I'm already so old. I'll leave the matter of exterminating demons to the younger generation." Yu Qifeng chuckled and said, "Your real martial arts sect's senior Ning Xuanji fought against the demonic sect's leader, Dugu Weiwei, for the entire martial arts world. How heroic was that? I say, old Taoist Guangning, you didn't inherit the tradition of your patriarch. You didn't even make a move when you saw such a powerful devil Dao Jr. here." Taoist Guangning continued to speak slowly. "It's precisely because the Grand Master had already dealt with the biggest devil, so the remaining small devils were left for others to deal with. Our real martial arts sect has been in the limelight enough. We should also give some opportunities to the other sections. Yu Qifeng, your White Tiger Hall has killed many people in the past. Why don't you go and deal with Lin Yi? That way you can accumulate some merit." Yu Qifeng just smiled and did not answer. He was not an idiot. Why would he do such a strenuous and unrewarding thing? The White Tiger Hall was neither a righteous path nor a demonic path. In fact, the entire 4 spiritual sects were both righteous and demonic. Therefore, Yu Qifeng was not interested in things like slaying demons and defending the Tao. Moreover, although there weren't many demonic sects that entered Xiaofan Heaven this time, there were still quite a few of them. There were also some people from the hidden devil lineage. The White Tiger Hall had no enmity with the hidden devil lineage. Why would they provoke them now? Huangfu Weiming, who was at the side, frowned and said, "Yu Qifeng, don't always disturb Taoist Guangning. What righteous path and demonic path? The most important thing now is to open the ruins." Huangfu Weiming's attitude was actually similar to Yu Qifeng's. Things like slaying demons and defending the Tao might have been done by the Huangfu clan during their peak. However, they were too lazy to do it now. As long as Lin Yi did not touch their interests, they were too lazy to provoke Lin Yi. Moreover, it seemed that Lin Yi knew the rules. He just stood at the side and did not move. Although he had the strength to severely injure a martial arts grandmaster, he did not really think that he was a martial arts grandmaster. However, what they did not know was that if Chu Xiu really had the strength to injure a martial arts grandmaster casually, would he still be able to keep his competitors here? The consumption of the 7 demon saber was too great. Previously, when Chu Xiu injured Su Xing with his saber, it was also because he had been fighting with Su Xing for a long time. Moreover, it was only after the soul-extinguishing arrow had injured Su Xing's spirit that he suddenly succeeded in one strike. If they were to fight face to face, once the 7-demon saber was blocked by his opponent, Chu Xiu would not have the strength to make a second move. Then he could only prepare to escape. Therefore, although the 7 sabers on Chu Xiu's back looked very intimidating, in reality, they were indeed used to intimidate people. Even if it was the hatred saber that Chu Xiu had the most confidence in, he would not use the 7-demon saber easily. Just as Taoist Guangning was about to open the restriction of the valley, 3 young Taoist priests from the Chunyang Dao sect came together. In this Xiaofan heaven, most of the martial artists were fighting for the unity of heaven and man realm. The strength of the 5 qis collecting in the origin realm was already on the lower side. Although people like Luo Feiheng, Yan Fian, and the others were also at the 5 qis collecting in the origin realm, they were all young talents ranked on the Longhu list. Their strength was even stronger than the ordinary unity of heaven and man realm. Obviously, although the young Taoist priests from the Chunyang Dao sect were not weak, they could not be compared to Yan Fian and Luo Feiheng. However, although the 3 young Taoist priests were not strong, they were very ambitious. Seeing Chu Xiu standing there, one of them immediately snorted, "You guys are actually able to sit back and watch such a devil cultivator roam freely for so long. Could it be that after entering Xiaofan heaven, you guys don't even have the heart to exterminate the devil and only care about reaping benefits?" Everyone present looked at each other with a strange expression. Why did the Taoist priests from the Chunyang Dao sect seem to be a little simple-minded? Who didn't enter Xiaofan heaven to reap benefits? It would be abnormal to exterminate the devil and defend the Dao in a place like this, okay? Moreover, if Lin Ye's strength was not that great, they wouldn't mind exterminating the devil and defending the Dao to build up a reputation for themselves. At the same time, they would have one less competitor. However, the problem was that the person they wanted to exterminate the devil and defend the Dao had just severely injured the Great Light Temple's Dharma Hall's first seat, Su Xing. He was also a talent of the hidden devil lineage. Were they tired of living to find such a person to exterminate the devil and defend the Dao? When the 3 Chunyang Dao sect martial artists saw that everyone present had no reaction, they felt that it was a little strange. Good and evil should be irreconcilable, so why were these people so indifferent? One of the Chunyang Dao sect disciples opened his mouth and said to Taoist Guangning, "Senior Guangning." However, before he could finish his words, Taoist Guangning, who had always been slow, spoke first. "I know what you want to say. It's not easy for the few of you juniors to cultivate to the point where you can roam the martial world. Don't bring that old fellow Zhenyang Zi's way of doing things to the martial world. It's not your turn to worry about exterminating the devil and defending the Dao now. Just watch obediently." That Chunyang Dao sect disciple straightened his neck and said, "However, if no one is worried, who will uphold justice in this huge martial world?" In the past, Senior Ning Xuanji of the true martial sect stood out when the devil was in the martial world. He was our role model. Could it be that the true martial sect has forgotten Senior Ning Xuanji's teachings in the past? Being said by a junior martial artist in front of him, no matter how good Taoist Guangning's temper was, his face turned black. Seeing that they were all from the 3 sects of Dao, he took the initiative to remind them. He didn't expect that this junior martial artist didn't appreciate it. Yu Qifeng, who was at the side, laughed weirdly. "Old Taoist, you said so much, but not only did he not appreciate it, he even taught you a lesson. The Chunyang Dao sect is very unyielding. It's comparable to the Great Light Temple. No, it's even more unyielding than the Great Light Temple." Taoist Guangning said with a black face, "The Chunyang Dao sect is actually the lineage of our Dao sect with the longest history. In the past, our Dao sect's founder, Lu Chunyang, passed down the lineage of Chunyang Dao sect. Its purpose was to pass down the Dao to the people and be free and unfettered. However, the successive sect masters in the later generations were all stubborn people. They controlled pure Yonggang Qi, but they couldn't tolerate even the slightest grain of sand in their eyes. They were strong and extreme, which caused the pure Yang Dao sect to become like this. Among the 3 major Dao sects, the strongest at the beginning should be the Chunyang Dao sect. As the sect inherited by Lu Chunyang, one of the Dao sect's founders, the Chunyang Dao sect could be said to be the leader of the righteous when it was at its strongest. However, the stubborn actions of successive generations of sect masters had completely changed the style of the Chunyang Dao sect. They had made countless enemies in the martial world. Although they were still strong now, they couldn't be compared to their peak. Needless to say, the time when the real martial sect was strong was when the real martial sect had Ning Xuanji. Including after the disappearance of Ning Xuanji and Dugu Weiwei, the real martial sect was still strong for a long time. At that time, even the Great Light Temple directly recognized the real martial sect as the leader of the righteous. However, Ning Xuanji's halo only existed for about 100 years. Without a powerhouse like Ning Xuanji, the decline of the real martial sect was inevitable. Therefore, the real leader among the three major Dao sects now was the Taoist Master Mansion of Longhu Mountain. The Taoist Master Mansion wasn't strong because of one person. Instead, it was the result of the Taoist Master Mansion's accumulation until now. Moreover, looking at Zhang Qingzhen, if there were no accidents, the next generation of the Taoist Master Mansion would continue to be strong. There wasn't a particularly fierce competition between the three major Dao sections. They were considered to have some kinship with each other. Therefore, Taoist Guangning kindly reminded them. However, since the junior martial artists didn't appreciate it, Taoist Guangning couldn't do anything about it. He couldn't really stoop to the juniors' level. However, although Taoist Guangning didn't want to stoop to it, there were people who objected, such as Chu Xiao. He stood there obediently and didn't provoke anyone. He was already keeping a low profile. He didn't expect that there would still be people who came to provoke him. Chu Xiao looked at the three young disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect with a stern gaze and said coldly, "Get rid of the devil and defend the righteous path?" How could three insignificant characters be worthy of saying these words? Today I'm here. I'd like to see how you are going to get rid of me, the devil, and how you are going to defend your righteous path. As soon as he finished speaking, a dense murderous intention suddenly descended from Chu Xiao's body. The gush of murderous intention immediately made the three disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect feel as though they had fallen into an ice cave. They were shivering all over. Along the way, Chu Xiao had killed many people. Even Chu Xiao himself couldn't count the number of people who died directly or indirectly in his hands. This level of murderous intention wasn't something that the three inexperienced fellows could withstand. Chapter 559. Chu Xiao's temper had never been good. It wasn't his habit to not talk back after being scolded. Moreover, he had appeared with the identity of a demon. If he wasn't more arrogant and insolent, how could he be called a demon? Under the pressure of Chu Xiao's murderous intent, although the three young martial artists of Chunyang Dao sect were shivering, they still held their heads high and revealed an unyielding stance. The three of them were shouting about slaying demons and defending justice. In the eyes of others, the disciples of Chunyang Dao sect seemed to be sick in the head. But in actual fact, to the disciples of Chunyang Dao sect, it was their belief. It was a belief that was instilled in them since they were young. Speaking of which, the reason why Chunyang Dao sect had such a stubborn thought wasn't only related to the personalities of their sect masters, it was also related to the status of Chunyang Dao sect itself. In the past, Chunyang Dao sect was the leader of the world's Dao sects, and even the leader of the righteous sections. Others could ignore slaying demons and defending justice, but they had to do so. They had to use such methods to maintain their status. It was a pity that the pugilistic world wasn't black or white. By doing so, Chunyang Dao sect would only create more enmity with the demon sections. To Chunyang Dao sect, there weren't many benefits. It was just like how they were provoking Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao wasn't Taoist Guangning who would let them off. Seeing that Chu Xiao seemed like he was going to kill them, Taoist Guangning couldn't be bothered about breaking the formation anymore. He hurriedly said, "Little friend Lin, give me some face. These three juniors of Dao sect are insensible, so you don't have to be so serious. They don't know what's the most important thing in this small mortal world. Don't you know? Killing them wouldn't bring you any benefits other than offending Chunyang Dao sect." Taoist Guangning was really a good person. This time around, it was Chunyang Dao sect that made a mistake and took the initiative to seek death. Taoist Guangning could pretend that he didn't see it and continue to break the formation. Furthermore, he had already reminded the three pure Yang sect disciples to keep a low profile and not cause trouble. In the end, they did not listen. Therefore, Even if Taoist Guangning turned a blind eye to it, he had already done his best. In the end, Taoist Guangning still spoke up for them. This was already generous enough. However, even though Taoist Guangning had good intentions, the three martial arts practitioners of Chunyang Dao sect didn't appreciate his kindness at all. One of them said angrily, "Senior Guangning, you didn't kill this devil Dao villain, but you still call him a little friend. Is this something that our righteous Dao sect would do? Even though our abilities are weak, we aren't people that are afraid of death. If this devil Dao villain dares to touch us, the seniors of our Chunyang Dao sect will naturally take revenge for us in the future." Chu Xiu finally knew why Li Feilian, who was ranked 4th on the Longhu ranking in the past, that extremely low-profile fella, would kill the geniuses of Chunyang Dao sect. This bunch of fellas simply didn't give anyone a way out. They just had to push the matter into a situation where they wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. Just now, Taoist Guangning had already spoken to make peace. He was a senior of the pugilistic world and treated Chu Xiu as an equal. In terms of face, both of them could live. Moreover, he was the only one who could break the formation in this valley. Chu Xiu didn't want to fall out with him. Therefore, as long as the three of them admitted defeat, Chu Xiu would only teach them a lesson. He would still spare their lives. But now, the three of them were obviously forcing Chu Xiu to kill them. Looking at Taoist Guangning, Chu Xiu said in a hoarse voice, "Taoist Guangning, you are a sensible person. This isn't the battlefield of the righteous Dao sect, and I didn't initiate any trouble. However, if someone wants to court death, then don't blame me. Someone pointed at my nose and wanted to kill me. If I don't even let out a fart, where would the dignity of my devil Dao be?" As soon as he finished his words, Taoist Guangning's expression changed. He had even tightened his grip on the Dao sword in his hand and said hurriedly, "Wait." Unfortunately, it was too late. Against 3-5 Chi's Unification Realm martial artists, Chu Xiu didn't need to put in so much effort. With a wave of his hand, his mental strength turned into distorted strings. Following Chu Xiu's plucking, the soul-absorbing zither melody exploded. Soul-suppressing Hades tune, sending you to the underworld. Now Chu Xiu's mental strength had even surpassed most of the martial arts masters. Against 3-5 Chi's Unification Realm martial artists, it was simply a one-sided battle. In an instant, the three Chunyang Dao sect martial artists were bleeding from their 7 apertures. The pure yang qi that protected their bodies didn't even have the slightest bit of resistance before their bodies were penetrated by the powerful mental strength. The three Chunyang Dao sect martial artists laid on the ground. They didn't even have the chance to let out a cry. This scene made everyone's heart turn cold. First, they were shocked by Lin Ye's demonic killing method. Historically, mental attacks were the hardest to defend against. Primordial spirit secret techniques were still a minority in the pugilistic world. However, once it was cultivated to perfection, its power would be extremely terrifying, just like Not Song's Xiahou clan. Xiahou clan's imperial spirit technique was simple and direct with overbearing power. However, Lin Ye's primordial spirit secret technique had a strong demonic color and was extremely demonic. The second thing that shocked them was Lin Ye's way of doing things. He was simply unscrupulous and overbearing to the extreme. In recent years, diabolism had been on the decline. Everyone had always heard of heroes from the righteous path killing demons and being praised by the people of the pugilistic world. It was rare to hear of outstanding disciples from sects being killed by diabolism. It seemed that apart from the overbearing power displayed by moon-worshipping cult during the Battle of Mount Floating Jade, diabolism rarely showed such unyielding strength. In the end, Chu Xiu killed 3 outstanding disciples of the pure Yang Daoist sect's younger generation without hesitation. He was very decisive. The last outstanding disciple from Chunyang Dao sect who had reached the oneness of heaven and man realm was killed by Li Feilian with 2 slashes. This time, Zhen Yangzi brought another 4 young disciples with him to oneness of heaven and man realm. After oneness of heaven and man realm, 1 or 2 of them would have reached the oneness of heaven and man realm. In the end, 3 of the 4 people were killed by Lin Yi. Chunyang Dao sect was probably going to vomit blood this time. Seeing the 3 disciples of Chunyang Dao sect being killed in front of him, Taoist Guangning's eyes revealed a hint of anger. Dao sect was like birds of a feather. The 3 of them were the younger generation of Dao sect. In the end, they were killed in front of him. Regardless of whether it was right or wrong, Daoist Guangning obviously couldn't stay silent. Seeing Daoist Guangning's action, Chu Xiu's hand held onto the hatred blade behind his back and said plainly, Daoist Guangning, everything in this world has to be reasonable. If you were to find a way out of this embarrassing situation, I would give you face. However, these 3 idiots have already made their decision. What do you want me to do? Now that I've killed them, if Dao sect wants to find trouble with me, I'll take them on. To put it bluntly, I've fought with more than 1 or 2 martial arts grandmasters. Some people who had participated in the Black Demon Tower immediately thought of the previous battle. The head of Dharma Institute, Su Xing, was severely injured by the 7 strange demonic blades behind Lin Yi. Nobody present knew the price of using the 7 demonic blades. In their opinion, Chu Xiu's deterrence was basically the same as a martial arts grandmaster. Just when the situation was tense, Huangfu Weiming pulled Daoist Guangning's hand and said in a deep voice, Daoist Guangning, don't be impulsive. You also said that we're not here to slay demons and defend justice after entering Xiaofan heaven. The people of Chunyang Dao sect were courting death. You've already done your best. Do you want to get yourself involved now? Listen to my advice and let this matter go. Lin Yi is an outstanding figure cultivated by the Yinma clan. Don't treat him as an ordinary junior. You know Su Xing's strength. His Vajra Buddha flame suppresses demons and punishes evil. It's more powerful for martial artists who practice demonic techniques. However, Su Xing was seriously injured by this kid's demonic blades. Even if you don't think about yourself, you have to think about your true martial sect. Once something happens to you in Xiaofan heaven, the 2 young people of your true martial sect will have no backing. Yu Qifeng didn't add fuel to the fire this time. He just comforted him. That's right. Old Taoist, you have to calm down. Even if you really want to attack that kid, there's still a chance later. Don't be in a hurry. Of course, Huangfu Weiming and Yu Qifeng weren't so kind. Everything was for Daoist Guangning's sake. They stopped Daoist Guangning because they were afraid that Daoist Guangning and Lin Yi would really fight. Without anyone to break the formation, they wouldn't be able to enter the valley. A place that was able to preserve such a complete formation during the ancient Great Calamity would definitely have a lot of good stuff. Daoist Guangning wasn't a member of Chunyang Dao sect. He was still willing to listen to advice. In the end, Daoist Guangning let go of the hand that was holding the Dao sword. He turned around and went to break the formation without saying a word. Everyone present heaved a sigh of relief when they saw this scene. After all, now that Daoist Guangning had opened the formation, they could still go in and get some benefits. If Daoist Guangning and Lin Yi were to fight to the death, they could only watch the show. They wouldn't even get any benefits. Only LV Fengxian secretly wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Brother Chu was a little too aggressive. It seemed that after he revealed his identity as a devil cultivator, his way of doing things had become closer to the devil cultivators. No, it should be said that he was even more radical than the devil cultivators. Daoist Guangning turned around and continued to break the formation. After about an hour, the formation in front of the valley let out a soft sound. Instantly, rays of light shone brightly. Everyone's eyes lit up. The formation was broken. As the formation was broken, there were some changes at the entrance of the valley. The entire entrance became like a layer of ripples on the surface of the water. Daoist Guangning was the first to reach out his hand and directly pass through the ripples. There wasn't any abnormality. Therefore, he directly stepped into the ripples on the surface of the water. Upon seeing this, Yu Qifeng and the rest also followed suit. After the ripples on the surface of the water, a fragrant aroma assaulted their faces. What appeared in front of everyone was a scene of birds chirping and flowers fragrant. It was as beautiful as a paradise. Chapter 560. Most of the scenes in Xiaofan Heaven were extremely dilapidated, just like the spirit treasure temple that Chu Xiu had been to before and the Black Demon Tower. They were all dilapidated beyond recognition. However, the valley in front of them was extremely well preserved. There was a small bridge and flowing water, birds were chirping, and flowers were fragrant. It was simply like a fairyland. However, there were layers of mist in the valley, which made it difficult for them to see what was in front of them. However, they could still see the pavilions and towers in the distance. Everyone immediately became spirited. Such a well-preserved relic was extremely rare in Xiaofan heaven. The more well-preserved it was, the more benefits it had. They had picked up a treasure this time. Everyone thought so and also walked into the valley. What came into view was a small bridge and a small river that was only a few meters wide. However, the river was a bit muddy, and they couldn't see what was in it. The small bridge was extremely exquisite, and it was covered with all kinds of runes. There was also a big stone beside the bridge. Guangning, who was walking at the front, stared at the runes on the bridge and frowned. He didn't continue to walk forward. Yu Qifeng and Huang Fuwei knew that Guangning must have discovered something, so they didn't urge him. However, the small bridge was a bit too exquisite. It could only accommodate one person at a time, so it was a bit crowded for two people. Therefore, although the martial artists at the back were anxious, they didn't dare to let the three people in front of them pass first. Chu Xiu had the ability to do so. He secretly used the heaven's sun gazing at air technique, and looked at the small bridge and river. His eyes were suddenly filled with a strange color. He didn't move, but just stood behind the three people obediently. However, some of the people present couldn't wait any longer. The small river was only a few meters wide. For an expert of the unity of heaven and man realm, they could cross it with a single leap. Therefore, one of the martial artists couldn't help but move his body and directly cross to the other side of the river. However, just as his body reached the middle of the river, there was a sudden change. The originally muddy river had now turned into an evil yellowish-brown color. It was greasy like a slurry, emitting a nauseating smell. Some of the people present had smelled it before. It was the stench of a corpse. No one dared to imagine what the yellow-brown river water was that carried the stench of corpses. What was truly frightening was that whirlpools suddenly appeared in the river water, and more than 10 evil spirits surged out of the river water. Their faces were ashen, as if they had been starved for hundreds of years, leaving only a layer of skin on their skeletons. Their bodies were slightly transparent and covered in the yellowish-brown corpse fluid. One could even see their pitch-black bones through their transparent bodies. No matter how much the one with the Heaven Realm martial artist released his gang qi, it was useless. In less than a breath's time, he was entangled by these evil things and then dragged into the yellowish-brown corpse river. The corpse water surged, and the martial artist howled miserably. His body was corroded and melted by the corpse water, becoming transparent. However, the bones inside had yet to turn black, but his appearance was already exactly the same as those evil spirits. After a while, the martial artist was completely assimilated and sank into the water along with those evil spirits. The yellowish-brown corpse water was hidden under the surface of the river, and the entire river became the same as before. It was slightly muddy, but it was incomparably calm. However, everyone present took a step back in unison, and their eyes revealed incomparable horror. Under the seemingly calm surface of the river, there were such evil spirits and evil spirits hidden. 90% of the people present were from large aristocratic families or sections. They were all people who had seen the world. They had seen spirit beasts, fierce beasts, and all kinds of incomparably evil things. However, just like the river in front of them, there were some evil spirits and evil spirits inside. What was this thing? Chu Xiu was silent at the side. In fact, when he used the heaven's sun gazing at air to check just now, he had already discovered that something was wrong. There was a formation in the middle of the river, so even if Chu Xiu used the heaven's sun gazing at air, he could not see the detailed scene inside. However, Chu Xiu could see that there were very powerful negative emotions and extremely dense mental strength hidden in the river, so he was cautious and did not make a move. Yu Qifeng said with a solemn expression, "Old Taoist, what are these evil spirits?" Even Yu Qifeng was afraid of the scene just now. He could not see through the details of those vengeful spirits and evil spirits at all. However, the mental fluctuations revealed by some of the vengeful spirits and evil spirits were not inferior to a martial Dao Grand Master. Taoist Guangning said in a deep voice, "Have you heard of the underworld water and the bridge of helplessness?" Yu Qifeng was shocked, and his voice changed. "What did you say? This river is the underworld water, and this bridge is the bridge of helplessness?" Could it be that we are in the underworld? Everyone present felt a chill down their spine after hearing this. This kind of thing that only existed in legends suddenly appeared in front of you. Even a martial Dao master like Yu Qifeng could not remain calm. Daoist Guangning rolled his eyes at him and said, "Don't be so surprised, I only asked if you have heard of it. Who told you that this is the underworld water and the bridge of helplessness?" Yu Qifeng said angrily, "If not, then why are you asking?" Daoist Guangning said in a deep voice, "Although this place is not the underworld water and the bridge of helplessness, it is an imitation of the legendary underworld water and the bridge of helplessness. There are countless evil corpse energies in the river, and there is also a formation set up. As long as someone falls into the river, they will immediately be sucked dry by the underworld water that is filled with corpse energies. At the same time, their mental strength will not dissipate, but will attach to the remaining body and be assimilated into this evil spirit. I have never heard of this kind of evil formation. In the entire river, only the small bridge is engraved with the antidote rune, so it is safe." Yu Qifeng suddenly understood. He suddenly pointed at the stone and said, "Then this stone is the 3 live stone?" Daoist Guangning nodded and said, "Logically speaking it should be, but this should be a strange treasure. It was refined by a master blacksmith and some strange methods of divination master. Combined with the rune power of the bridge of helplessness, it can calculate the origin of a person's past life, but it should be impossible to calculate the future. Even if a powerful divination master were to calculate the future, even a small matter would consume their blood, sweat, and lifespan. This is only an artifact that was refined by someone. It can only be seen for fun. Don't take it seriously." As he said this, Daoist Guangning took the initiative to walk over and put his hand on the 3 live stone. Instantly, a faint light enveloped it, but after a moment, it disappeared. Yu Qifeng asked doubtfully, "Old Daoist, what did you see?" Daoist Guangning smiled and shook his head. "As expected, I can't see the future, but I saw a monk. Could it be that I was a monk in my past life?" Although Taoism and Buddhism were both orthodox sects, Taoism and Buddhism were not on the same side. Even Daoist Guangning, who was a good person, didn't have a good expression when he saw the monks from the Great Light Temple. His attitude was even worse than Chu Xiu, who was a martial artist from the demonic path. It could be imagined how great the hatred between Taoism and Buddhism was. Without the threat of the demonic Tao, the conflicts between Taoist and Buddhism were the most frequent. Therefore, if this Daoist Guangning was really a monk in his past life, then it would be interesting. However, Daoist Guangning said that this thing was only an artifact and shouldn't be taken seriously. After all, no one dared to say that they completely believed in the future of their past life and reincarnation. Yu Qifeng also went over to touch the stone, but then he shook his head and said, "This thing is really not accurate. How could I be a scholar in my past life?" After saying that, he followed Daoist Guangning onto the bridge of helplessness and walked to the other side of the river. The people behind him also stepped in one after another and touched the 3 live stone along the way. It didn't matter if this thing was accurate or not, it was always fun to look at it. When it was Lu Fengxian's turn, his expression was a little weird. Luo Feiheng asked curiously, "Brother Lu, who did you see?" Lu Fengxian scratched his head and said, "I saw myself. I was holding the unparalleled divine weapon and wearing battle armor. However, I couldn't see my face clearly." Luo Feiheng rolled his eyes and said, "That's not right. I feel that the person you saw should be Marquis Lu. Didn't everyone say that you are the reincarnation of Marquis Lu? Maybe you were really Marquis Lu in your past life?" Lu Fengxian shrugged his shoulders. He didn't know either. One had to know that he personally saw Marquis Lu's true soul shatter and fuse with his body. If he was Marquis Lu in his past life, then who was the true soul fragment that fused with his body? Lu Fengxian didn't care about this kind of thing. However, when Luo Feiheng finished touching the 3 live stone, her face was a little red. Lu Fengxian asked curiously, "Who was your past life?" Luo Feiheng didn't say anything. He only pushed Lu Fengxian and said with slight anger, "Why are you asking so much? Don't you know that some women's secrets can't be said? Let's go, don't waste time." Seeing Luo Feiheng's expression, Lu Fengxian became even more curious. However, his personality was indifferent. Since Luo Feiheng didn't want to say, he didn't ask. Chu Xiu followed behind Lu Fengxian and stepped onto the bridge of helplessness. The others were very interested in the 3 live stone, but Chu Xiu didn't really care about it. The others didn't know who they were in their past lives, but Chu Xiu knew. However, when he walked to the 3 live stone, Chu Xiu also touched it subconsciously. In an instant, a faint light enveloped Chu Xiu. However, what appeared in front of him wasn't what he expected. It wasn't the appearance of his past life. It wasn't the appearance of anything else, but nothing. What appeared in front of Chu Xiu was an empty space. It was a complete void. This made Chu Xiu feel a little strange. Regardless of whether it was real or fake, why did all kinds of people appear when other people touched the 3 live stone, but he didn't? Was it because he had transmigrated? However, Chu Xiu didn't pay too much attention to this matter. However, when the others behind saw that Chu Xiu had stopped for a long time, they were quite dissatisfied and secretly discussed. Of course, they only dared to discuss in secret. Chu Xiu didn't care about it and turned around to leave. However, when he turned around, a crack appeared on the 3 live stone, and it instantly lost all its spiritual energy. Chapter 561. Chu Xiu was stunned by the sudden crack of the 3 live stone. The warriors at the back thought that Chu Xiu had secretly done something to the 3 live stone because of their previous discussion. Due to Chu Xiu's previous power, they didn't dare to say anything. However, they were secretly muttering, "This guy from the demonic path is really stingy. It seems that we have to be careful of Lin Yi in the future. We must not speak ill of him in front of him." Chu Xiu frowned. He didn't see anything on the 3 live stone. However, the 3 live stone suddenly cracked after he finished looking at it. This strange thing made Chu Xiu feel a little uncomfortable. However, it wasn't the time to think about this. It was more important to get some benefits in the Xiaofan heaven. Guangning and the others who were at the front walked very slowly. The others at the back didn't dare to rush either. They were afraid that they would encounter some evil things. Previously, they thought that this place was a paradise with birds chirping and flowers fragrant. It must be the residence of a big righteous sect. However, when they saw the strangeness of the underworld and walked across the bridge of helplessness, they completely threw this thought to the back of their minds. How could this be a secluded big righteous sect? It was clearly an evil devil's den. Everyone continued to move forward, and the pavilions that were previously hidden in the mist appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Previously, they felt that these pavilions that were hidden in the fog had a trace of a mortal aura. However, they could only feel a dense ghostly aura now. What appeared before everyone's eyes was a large expanse of complete buildings. Although all of the buildings were incomparably grand, the outer layer was painted pitch black. Moreover, there were strange runes engraved on the exterior of the buildings, giving off a feeling of irritation. On top of the main hall at the front, there were 4 big words written on a white plaque: Blissful Devil Palace. Guangning frowned. He was experienced and knowledgeable. There were many ancient books in the true martial arts sect. However, he had never heard of this Blissful Devil Palace. However, looking at the scale of the ruins, the powerful formation and the evil underworld water bridge of helplessness, this Blissful Devil Palace must be a top demonic sect in ancient times. Yu Qifeng led the way. He pushed open the palace door. His sharp white tiger baleful god power was exerted to the extreme. His entire body seemed like a weapon. The door was pushed open. There wasn't any danger inside. However, the scene inside was somewhat beyond everyone's imagination. The hall that looked neat and tidy on the outside was in a mess on the inside. All kinds of chairs were scattered on the ground, and at the center of the hall, there should have been something like a statue. However, it had already been moved away, leaving only a mark. Everyone present looked at each other. They had a strange feeling. It was as if the people of the Blissful Demon Palace had left in a hurry. They could even tell from these traces that the warriors of the Blissful Demon Palace had been in a panic 10,000 years ago. It was as if they would have lost their lives if they had been a second slower. There were simply too many things that had been moved out of the main hall. The floor was a mess, and there were many things in a mess. Everyone searched for a while. They didn't find anything valuable, so they continued to explore. Behind the main hall was a large number of pavilions and palaces. Usually, these places were where the disciples of the blissful devil palace stayed in seclusion, as well as their residences. Even the armory and pill store were located here. In fact, this area was the most precious place in the entire blissful devil palace. However, when everyone stepped into this area, they felt that the fog here was thicker than the underworld bridge. They couldn't even see their faces clearly. Fortunately, although everyone's perception was somewhat suppressed, it wasn't too serious. Taoist Guangming frowned and said, "Everyone be careful." The blissful devil palace's warriors left very strangely. They were in a hurry, so they didn't close some of the formations. They didn't take some of the things with them. It's best not to touch the things here before you have the confidence. Otherwise, once the formations are activated, it won't be fun. You'll only harm yourself and others. Taoist Guangming was doing this for their own good. These ancient arrays were originally very evil, especially this extreme bliss devil palace. Even he had to be careful around it. However, the others didn't think so. To them, they were already at a disadvantage when competing with Taoist Guangming and the other martial masters. They could only get a little bit of soup. If they took the initiative and left after getting a treasure, it would be worth it. Although there were risks, they knew the principle of seeking riches amidst danger. Everyone was afraid of death. But in the face of benefits, they weren't afraid of death. If they were all extremely cautious and fearful, they wouldn't have been able to cultivate to their current level. Looking at the others' expressions, Taoist Guangming couldn't help but shake his head. Yu Qifeng sneered. "Old Taoist, why do you care about them? They're courting death. You can't stop them. If something really happens, let their sect feel sorry for them. It's not your turn to feel sorry for them." Taoist Guangming didn't say anything. He carefully explored the place. As he walked, Taoist Guangming frowned. "This blissful devil palace is a bit strange. The formations are too intact." Huangfu Weiming said, "Since this blissful devil palace was a great demonic sect in the past, they should have some foundation. It's normal for them to survive in the calamity of the world." Taoist Guangming shook his head. "That's what I thought in the beginning. But soon I realized something was wrong. Look at the situation in the hall. Those disciples of blissful devil palace left in a hurry. Obviously, the situation has reached a critical moment. That's why a great demonic sect was so flustered. If the blissful demon palace's formation was really so powerful that it could withstand the great tribulation of heaven and earth, then why did the disciples of the blissful demon palace flee in such a hurry? Wasn't it better for them to stay in the formation? This is actually the third time I've entered the minor mortal world. I've explored a few ruins in the minor mortal world. All of them had different degrees of damage. I couldn't find a ruin that wasn't damaged at all. There must be something wrong with this abnormal situation. Anyway, this blissful devil palace doesn't seem right to me. Very wrong." Right at this moment, a soft exclamation came from the crowd. Everyone was startled and turned to look in that direction. A 5-cheese origin realm martial artist said helplessly, "My senior brother isn't here. He was behind me just now, but as he walked he disappeared." There were about 70 to 80 people who entered the valley. It could be seen at a glance. At this time, everyone suddenly looked around and found that there were more than 10 people missing in their midst. However, the identities of the warriors present were a little too complicated. There were people from various sects and clans. Therefore, even though some people were missing from the crowd didn't really care. They thought that these people didn't listen to Taoist Guangming's advice and went off to act alone. Only when this martial artist's senior brother disappeared did the crowd feel that something was wrong. Something must have gone wrong. But at this moment, a chewing sound came from the fog. Everyone shuddered when they heard it. A black shadow quickly flashed through the fog. In an instant, a warrior screamed miserably, and his figure instantly disappeared into the fog. Everyone was shocked. Taoist Guangming yelled, "Pay attention to the surroundings." Just as he finished speaking, dozens of black shadows attacked them from the fog. Their speed was so fast that even the union of heaven and man realm martial artists could barely see their silhouettes. Faced with this kind of attack, Yu Qifeng snorted coldly. The white tiger baleful divine wind around his body exploded. A figure crashed into his body and was immediately minced into a cloud of black and purple bloody mist by the incomparably sharp and powerful Gang Qi. It seemed somewhat disgusting. Daoist Guang Ning swung the horsetail whisk in his hand. It seemed to be a casual move, but it directly flung away several of those figures. Only Huangfu Weiming's strength was slightly weaker. But no matter how weak he was still a martial arts grandmaster. The attacks of those figures were a great threat to the Five Qis unification of heaven and man realm martial artists. They were slightly weaker to the unity of heaven and man realm martial artists. But when facing a martial arts grandmaster, they didn't pose a threat at all. And when Chu Xiu faced these things, he had to occupy a greater advantage. What Chu Xiu was least afraid of were fast things. When the heaven sun gazing at air technique was used, the speed of those black shadows was simply extremely slow in his eyes. Boundless demonic energy exploded in his hand. Chu Xiu directly grabbed the black shadow in his hand. But when he saw that thing, even Chu Xiu was shocked. It was a humanoid thing that was only half the height of a normal person. It was called a thing because although it had a humanoid shape, it didn't look like a human. That thing had sharp claws on its hands and feet, but its head was one size bigger than a normal person. Its belly was even bigger than its head. They looked ferocious, and their skin was shriveled to the point that only a layer of skin was left. There were sharp teeth in their mouths, but their eyes revealed a crazy bloodthirsty intent. There was not a single trace of blood in them. The strangest thing was on their heads. The skin there was actually transparent, and there was a drop of pitch-black liquid in their heads, which was very conspicuous. This thing actually looked very similar to the hungry ghost of the Hell Path in the legends. What exactly did those guys from the Blissful Demon Palace refine? That thing was still struggling in Chu Xiu's hand. But at this moment, Chu Xiu's heart started to throb. The glazed golden thread goo was constantly releasing a thought, as if it was very eager for the thing in Chu Xiu's hand. Chapter 562. The glazed golden silk goo was a living creature, but no matter how strong it was only a goo worm. Therefore it had no intelligence and only instincts. At this time, Chu Xiu could clearly sense the glazed golden silk goo's desire for this thing, but he did not know what it was longing for. Chu Xiu exerted force in his hand, wanting to crush this thing to death, but he did not succeed. Although this thing looked extremely thin and weak, its body was comparable to gold and iron, and it had a certain degree of resistance to Gang Qi. Demonic energy erupted, and the hungry ghost-like thing's neck was completely broken by Chu Xiu. However, it was not dead yet, and its body was still twitching. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and pointed with a finger. A powerful demonic energy condensed at one point, and directly smashed the thing's head. However, at this time, the black liquid in the thing's head involuntarily seeped into Chu Xiu's body, flowing along Chu Xiu's meridians and blood vessels, flowing into the glazed golden silk goo and being devoured. This situation was not initiated by Chu Xiu, but the glazed golden silk goo's passive behavior. Even Chu Xiu was shocked and wanted to stop it, but it was too late. The glazed golden silk goo was symbiotic with Chu Xiu's body, which was equivalent to a part of Chu Xiu's body. How could he stop his body's subconscious reaction? However, that drop of strange black liquid did not cause any harm to Chu Xiu. A part of its power was devoured by the glazed golden silk goo, causing the glazed golden silk goo's rhythm to become stronger. The remaining part of the power was integrated into Chu Xiu's spiritual power, which actually increased Chu Xiu's spiritual power. There was also an indescribable feeling that made Chu Xiu a little uncertain. However, there was one thing that Chu Xiu was sure of. Killing this thing and taking the black liquid in its head would be beneficial to the glazed golden silk goo and his spiritual power. At this moment, the demon-like thing pounced on them, causing some of the weaker cultivators to fall victim to its attacks. Daoist Guangning frowned and threw out an array disc. In an instant, the yin and yang powers rotated within the array disc. At the same time, a black and a white longsword fell into the array disc, triggering a surge of sword qi. Within a few hundred meters, the fog was dispersed, revealing an extremely horrifying scene. Outside the fog, a number of malevolent-looking evil spirits were desperately biting the corpses of the cultivators. There were even several evil spirits tearing at the same corpse. The entire scene was like hell. Even Yu Qifeng felt his scalp tingle when he saw this scene. He couldn't help but ask, "Old Taoist, what are these things? Is there a dire beast that looks like this?" Taoist Guangning's expression turned ugly. "Ferocious beast, my ass. These things used to be people. What extreme bliss, Demon Palace. It should be called Hell Demon Palace. These lunatics. They actually want to refine the evil spirits of the hungry ghost realm. I've read in some ancient books of the true martial sect that there was a devil who wreaked havoc in Jianghu in ancient times. He was called the demonic lord of six paths. He was a lunatic, the kind of lunatic who was truly insane. He actually imagined himself to have 6 personalities. Moreover, each personality was a genius in martial arts. He wanted to refine the incarnation of the 6 paths of reincarnation, using a secret technique. Then he would sever his soul into 6 parts and fuse them into the incarnation. For this, the demonic lord of 6 paths had killed countless people to conduct experiments. Among them, the incarnation of the hungry ghost realm looked like this. He would capture countless infants and place a formation on their bodies to gradually erase their consciousness. Then he would feed them with elixirs every day. After their souls were erased, they would be like walking corpses with only their instincts left. Then, they would be thrown into a closed space without any food or water. They would be made to kill each other and feed on each other's flesh and blood. Finally, they would be raised like a poisonous insect. That would be the incarnation of the hungry ghost realm. I've seen the diagram in the ancient books. The incarnation of the hungry ghost realm looked like this. However, it was much larger than these things. It was also much more powerful. It was a real hungry ghost from hell. However, it was recorded in the ancient books that the demonic lord of 6 paths had been killed by many experts of Jianghu because of his inhumane behavior. I didn't expect that the people of the blissful devil palace had obtained this secret technique from somewhere. They were actually refining such inhumane things. Every hungry ghost here represented the lives of countless innocent infants. Even if these people were people from tens of thousands of years ago, Guangning still felt extremely angry about this matter. After hearing this, Chu Xiu also frowned. Although he had cultivated many demonic techniques, he wouldn't cultivate such inhumane demonic techniques. Demons existed between heaven and earth. Although orthodox demonic techniques represented the negative energy between heaven and earth, there would always be yin and yang in everything. Techniques were just a kind of attribute. Whether it was a righteous technique or a demonic technique, if you used it to save people, it would be good. If you used it to kill people, it would be evil. Any technique was inhumane. However, as long as the person who cultivated it was a human, there would still be a trace of humanity left. Currently, those famous demonic overlords in Jianghu, whether it was Dugu Weiwei who suppressed the world in the past, or the current cult master of moon-worshipping cult, Yi Xiaonan, they had killed many people. However, what they killed were the lives of martial artists. There was no demonic overlord that became famous by slaughtering ordinary people. Such people were even despised by the demonic path itself. They couldn't be considered as demonic path anymore. They were more like demons. At this moment, Yu Qifeng looked at those hungry ghosts and frowned. These things have lived since ancient times. It has already been 10,000 years. Are they still alive? Enlightened Guangning frowned. I'm also puzzled about this. These things haven't completely devoured and evolved. In other words, they haven't truly become the incarnation of the hungry ghost Tao. In order to let them live after 10,000 years, it's possible to use some methods to make their souls hibernate. However, the people of Blissful Devil Palace have already left. Who made them hibernate? At this moment, a melodious flute sound suddenly resounded. The flute sound was mellow and melodious, but it was filled with boundless resentment. After listening to it, people couldn't help but feel upset. However, after those hungry ghosts heard the flute sound, they seemed to have received some kind of order. They quickly gathered together and didn't even care about eating the corpses anymore. In the dense fog, a white-clothed figure walked out. The white-clothed figure was actually a handsome young man. His hair was combed into a simple bun. He held an emerald green bamboo flute in his hand, and his skin was frighteningly pale. It was actually somewhat similar to the grayish-white skin of those hungry ghosts. The young man slowly walked over, and gently touched the heads of those hungry ghosts. These evil monsters actually stood obediently by his side, appearing abnormally docile. Looking at the corpses on the ground that had already been devoured by the hungry ghosts, the young man's eyes instantly revealed a trace of surprise. He picked up a relatively intact arm, and the corner of his mouth suddenly revealed a trace of a smile. That smile, coupled with his handsome face, should have been a very sunny scene, but it gave people a kind of evil feeling. Picking up the severed arm and placing it in front of his eyes, the handsome young man suddenly opened his mouth. His mouth widened to an extremely evil and terrifying extent. Inside his mouth were neat teeth, but they were densely packed with sharp teeth like those of hungry ghosts. In an instant, the young man swallowed the entire arm into his stomach, letting out a series of disgusting chewing sounds. After a while, he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and revealed a trace of an intoxicated expression on his face. With a slightly strange accent, he said, "The feeling of flesh and blood is so good. It's been 10,000 years, and I can finally taste flesh and blood again." Previously, everyone thought that this young man was a living person, and that he had used some kind of secret technique to survive from the ancient times until now. But now, it seemed that this guy was not a human at all, but clearly the strongest hungry ghost here. While controlling the yin-yang duality sword formation, Taoist Guangning asked in a deep voice, "What are you?" The young man rubbed his head and said, "Thing? I seem to have forgotten a lot of things. Old Taoist, you're a sensible person. You should know that hungry ghosts don't have divine souls or spiritual intelligence. They're completely like walking corpses. I spent a lot of effort to retain my spiritual intelligence after turning into a hungry ghost. Now I can't remember many things, including my own name. I'm just a pitiful worm forgotten by the blissful devil palace. I only remember that I'm responsible for feeding these disgusting guys." In the end, they all left. Master, senior martial uncle, senior martial brothers and sisters all left. I was forgotten in this completely empty blissful devil palace. In order to preserve my life, I could only take the initiative to turn myself into these guys that I usually feel disgusted by. It's been 10,000 years, I've been sleeping, waking up, and sleeping again. I've been mending the formation, mending the blissful devil palace, waiting for Master and the others to return. Do you guys have any news about Master and the others? That young man looked at Taoist Guangning and the others with a sincere expression. His appearance didn't have the slightest hint of the evil and terrifying look he had just now. Everyone had more or less understood what was going on. This guy was indeed a pitiful worm. Everyone in the blissful devil palace had already left before the ancient great calamity. In the end, no one knew if it was intentional or unintentional, but he was the only one left. In the end, in order to preserve his life, he actually turned himself into a hungry ghost from hell. As long as he was awake, he would mend the formation of the blissful devil palace. That was why this place looked so complete. Taoist Guangning looked at that young man and said coldly, "News? Your blissful devil palace has long been annihilated. How can there be any news? You guys actually dared to try refining an evil secret technique, like the hungry ghost path's incarnation. It's simply intolerable for the blissful devil palace to not die in the ancient great calamity." That young man sighed in disappointment. "Oh, so that's how it is." As soon as he finished speaking, waves of black gas with the stench of corpses appeared around him. Even the 3 martial Tao masters present felt a chill run down their spines when they sensed the aura. "If that's the case, then you guys are useless. Just obediently become my blood food. I'll be very gentle when I eat you guys. I won't be as dirty as those ugly things." Chapter 563. There were many dangers in Xiaofan Heaven, but for those who had already understood most of the rules of the ruins in Xiaofan Heaven, the real danger in Xiaofan Heaven wasn't the ruins that were already broken, but the warriors who entered Xiaofan Heaven with them. In the past, the most dangerous things in Xiaofan Heaven were only the remnants of the broken arrays from the great calamity of heaven and earth. Their lethality was limited, and the people who died in the hands of the same people would definitely be more than those who died in these arrays. In the end, who would have thought that they would be so unlucky this time, and enter such a devil's den? Before they even saw the item, more than 10 people had already died. At this moment, the young man's body was completely shrouded by corpse energy. The nails on his hands rapidly grew to a few feet long, like sharp swords. At the same time, his appearance had already begun to distort, and his eyes were glowing with red light. At this moment, he was even more terrifying than those malicious ghosts. A shrill howl resounded, and the young man directly pounced towards Daoist Guangning and the others. His speed was even faster than those ordinary hungry ghosts by a few times. It was as though he had teleported, and in the blink of an eye, he had already arrived in front of the three of them. Daoist Guangning's hands formed a sword finger, and the yin-yang dual pole Dao sword transformed into Taiji sword Qi. However, as the young man waved his sharp claws, the sword Qi was actually torn apart in an instant. Huangfu Weiming, who was behind Daoist Guangning, formed a seal with his hands, and boundless Gang Qi condensed into a huge seal the size of a small mountain. It fell with a loud bang, suppressing the heaven and earth, and its power was majestic and shocking. However, the young man who had transformed into a hungry ghost was shockingly strong. He didn't have any Gang Qi, but he relied on his own strength to forcefully smash the huge seal made of Gang Qi. Demon Die. Yu Qifeng was the last to make a move. The white tiger baleful god shield condensed into a huge blade, and with incomparable sharpness and killing intent, it slashed down with a loud bang. In the end, the young man was slashed by Yu Qifeng, and flew over 100 feet away. However, Yu Qifeng's blade only left a tear on his clothes, and revealed the grayish-white skin underneath. However, there was only a mark on it, and there wasn't even a wound. Seeing this scene, the expressions of Daoist Guangning and the others changed. Among the three of them, Daoist Guangning was the strongest in terms of cultivation accumulation. However, in terms of pure destructive power, Yu Qifeng was the strongest. The White Tiger Hall's White Tiger Baleful Divinity Force was renowned in the world. It condensed the strength of the Western White Tiger, Eugene, and it was incomparably sharp. At the same time, it drew in killing intent and baleful qi into it, adding 30% to its might. It was said that when the White Tiger Baleful Divine Wind was cultivated to its peak, it could even go head-on against a divine weapon. In the end, Yu Qifeng's saber had only left a white mark on the young man who had transformed into a hungry ghost. Just how strong was this fellow's defensive power? However, at this moment, it was already not their turn to sigh. That ravenous ghost-like young man was once again surrounded by black corpse qi as he roared and charged towards them. For a moment, Daoist Guangning and the other two could only barely withstand the attack of that ravenous ghost-like young man. Not only was the opponent's physical body strong, the corpse aura surrounding his body was also poisonous. It even had the effect of corroding other people's gang qi. Therefore, the more they fought, the worse the state of Daoist Guangning and the other two became. At this moment, the other hungry ghosts also pounced forward and fought with the crowd. Everyone present was instantly caught in a bitter battle. But while the others were fighting bitterly, Chu Xiu's eyes lit up. The demonic qi around his body erupted to the extreme. When he saw a hungry ghost, he directly smashed its head with a punch. That black liquid then fused into Chu Xiu's body, and was first devoured by the glazed golden thread goo. Then, a portion of the power was used to strengthen Chu Xiu's mental strength. No matter how hard the bodies of these hungry ghosts were, they couldn't compare to Chu Xiu's physical body, which cultivated the Great Vajra divine strength, and the Nine Heavens fiend golden body. His strength erupted to the extreme. It was very easy for him to kill one with a punch. After Chu Xiu had killed all the hungry ghosts around him, his gaze turned towards the others. These hungry ghosts had amazing defense, and were extremely difficult to deal with. Unless one had explosive strength like Chu Xiu, even a martial artist at the unity of heaven and man realm would find it difficult to cause harm to them. Therefore, most of the people present were having a hard time, and it was the same for Lu Fengxian's side. Actually, with Lu Fengxian's strength, it wasn't a problem for her to deal with these hungry ghosts. It was just that with Luo Feiheng's strength, it would be difficult for Luo Feiheng to deal with these hungry ghosts alone. Moreover, Lu Fengxian still had to take care of Luo Feiheng, which was somewhat taxing. Chu Xiu's figure moved, but he didn't directly help Lu Fengxian. Instead, he first killed all the hungry ghosts around Lu Fengxian, and then went to help Lu Fengxian. After killing those hungry ghosts, Chu Xiu only exchanged a glance with Lu Fengxian, and then continued to kill other hungry ghosts. Luo Feiheng held the blood spear red kite in her hand and asked curiously, "This guy from the Devil Dao is actually helping us?" Lu Fengxian smiled and said, "Some people from the Devil Dao don't kill innocent people, and some people from the Righteous Dao don't do chivalry." Luo Feiheng nodded. She had been in the underworld for a long time, so she naturally knew this principle. At this moment, the others also felt very strange. They thought to themselves, did Lin Ye's character change? They still remembered the scene of Lin Yi ruthlessly killing the 3 disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect. He didn't show any mercy and was extremely ruthless. In the end, he actually took the initiative to help them. Was there anything more strange than this in the world? Although the people present couldn't understand, they naturally couldn't fall behind when they saw that Lin Yi had helped them kill the hungry ghosts. If they couldn't kill them alone, they would kill them together. However, their actions made Chu Xiu very unhappy. Those hungry ghosts had to be killed as soon as possible in order to absorb the black liquid. If they were too late, the black liquid would immediately evaporate. Therefore, these people's actions seemed to be helping, but in fact, they were harming his interests. "All of you get lost." Chu Xiu shouted angrily at the few warriors who were besieging a hungry ghost, causing them to be stunned. "We're helping you reduce your burden, but you're scolding us here. Is Lin Yi crazy?" Seeing that these people didn't stop, Chu Xiu directly punched with a vast and majestic demonic aura. The powerful punch had a bit of the charm of Chen Qingdi's one punch to break all things. It directly included the few people present, and the hungry ghost in his attack range. When everyone present saw this scene, they all cursed inwardly at Chu Xiu for being a lunatic. They all dodged, allowing Chu Xiu to smash the hungry ghost into pieces. After killing dozens of such hungry ghosts in succession, Chu Xiu's mental strength had skyrocketed. It could be said that it far surpassed 90% of the martial Dao masters in the underworld. However, although his mental strength had skyrocketed, Chu Xiu discovered a problem. The mental strength he obtained by killing these hungry ghosts did not actually merge with his original mental strength. Instead, it existed in his primordial spirit alone. It was not transparent, but black-gray. It even dyed Chu Xiu's primordial spirit black. However, this black mental strength was no different from the mental strength that Chu Xiu cultivated himself, and there were no side effects. However, Chu Xiu had a feeling that this mental strength should have another use, but he had not figured it out yet. At this time, the glazed golden silk goo attached to Chu Xiu's heart had also undergone some changes. After devouring the black liquid, the glazed golden silk goo's body had grown a size. Originally, the appearance of the glazed golden silk goo was just a slightly cute and chubby golden silkworm. However, there was a black line on the back of the golden silkworm, giving it a slightly evil feeling. However, the glazed golden silk goo's strength was clearly growing. At this moment, the glazed golden silk goo also released a rhythm, pointing at the hungry ghost youth. Chu Xiu rubbed his chin. He knew what the glazed golden thread goo wanted to do, but to kill the young man who had turned into a hungry ghost and devour the black juice in his brain, that was a little difficult. The strength of the hungry ghost youth was not low previously. His initial estimation was that he was an expert who condensed the martial Dao true core. Now that he had turned into a hungry ghost, his body's defense was extremely shocking. He could even block the white tiger deity wind. It would be very difficult for him to kill him. Most importantly, Daoist Guangning and the other two were working together to besiege him. If Chu Xiu wanted to seize the initiative and kill him, it would be quite difficult. However, Chu Xiu could not care about other things for the time being. He directly rushed towards the hungry ghost youth and said, "Guys, let me help you." Previously, Daoist Guangning and the other two had already noticed that Chu Xiu had helped everyone to kill the hungry ghost. They were also somewhat puzzled about what Lin Yi was thinking. However, they were having a hard time fighting here, so they did not have the time to care so much. But now Lin Yi actually came to help them. This action was really puzzling to everyone present. If it wasn't for Lin Ye's ruthlessness and decisiveness when he killed the 3 Chunyang Dao sect disciples, they might really believe that although Lin Yi was from the demonic path, he was somewhat kind-hearted. But now, they all thought that Lin Ye's behavior was definitely strange, but they did not refuse. The hungry ghost youth was very difficult to deal with. On the other hand, Lin Ye's strength was obvious. His explosive power was already comparable to a martial Dao grandmaster, so he could share some of the pressure. When Chu Xiu went forward to fight with the hungry ghost youth, he felt that the other party was difficult to deal with. With a punch, he could only push the other party back a few steps. The powerful prison-guarding Wisdom King form landed, but it was forcibly torn apart by the other party. It did not have any effect at all. After fighting for a long time, Yu Qifeng could not help but say, "I say, kid, if you don't use the 7 sabers behind you now, when will you use them? Aren't those 7 sabers divine weapons? This guy's physical defense is amazing. He can defend against precious weapons, but I don't believe that he can also defend against divine weapons. If you don't want to use them, then give them to me and let me use them." Chapter 564. Yu Qifeng seemed to be a straightforward person, but in fact he was full of schemes. The 7 sabers on Chu Xiu's back were said to be divine weapons that had once injured Su Xing. Yu Qifeng had long been curious about them. At this moment, he also wanted to see how powerful these divine weapons were, and whether they were real or fake. However, Yu Qifeng was cunning, and Chu Xiu was not stupid. He laughed coldly and said, "Senior Yu Qi, have you not heard of the principle of not showing off important weapons? These 7 sabers are my trump cards. If I were to face this thing alone, I would use my sabers. However, now that the 4 of us are attacking together, everyone has a trump card that they haven't used yet. Is it appropriate for a junior like me to use my trump card first?" Yu Qifeng chuckled and did not say anything else. If he continued, he would really think that Chu Xiu was an idiot. Even with 4 against 1, they still could not subdue the ravenous ghost youth. At this moment, Chu Xiu's mental energy suddenly exploded, and he used the soul-calming Hades song. The sound of the zither went straight for the ravenous ghost youth. Amidst the soul-calming music, the ravenous ghost youth's eyes shone with red light. He pounced towards Chu Xiu like a madman, but his speed was much slower. Seeing this, Chu Xiu was immediately shocked. This thing was actually afraid of Essence Soul secret techniques. Actually, Chu Xiu did not use Essence Soul secret techniques at the beginning, because Essence Soul secret techniques were only effective against people. For example, this ravenous ghost youth had already become a half-human half-ghost existence. Chu Xiu was also not sure if Essence Soul secret techniques would be effective against him, so he did not waste his mental energy from the beginning. Unexpectedly, the effect of using Essence Soul secret techniques was better than Chu Xiu had imagined. Seeing this, Chu Xiu hurriedly said, "The 3 of you, as long as you help me hold this guy back, I am confident that I can use Essence Soul secret techniques to kill him." Taoist Guangning and the other 2 looked at each other and nodded. Right now, the 4 of them were working together, but Lin Yi was actually the only one who was proficient in Essence Soul secret techniques, and they were indeed very powerful. Other than that, there was no other way for the time being. Moreover, with the 3 of them present, Lin Yi could forget about playing any tricks. Therefore, when Taoist Guangning and the other 2 heard the command, they immediately used their full strength to stop the young man who had turned into a hungry ghost. Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hands, casting the Heart Demon Rotation Grand Technique and the Soul Extinguishing Grand Technique to the extreme at the same time. Boundless illusions enveloped the hungry ghost youth. Just as Chu Xiu was about to set up the killing formation in the illusory realm, the black mental energy that he had absorbed before suddenly moved. It actually sucked Chu Xiu's own mental energy into the illusory realm. In that instant, Chu Xiu's expression changed abruptly. However, the evolution of his mental strength was too fast. With just a thought, the illusion had already been laid down. Similarly, Chu Xiu had no time to resist. In an instant, he was already in the illusion. The illusion was laid down by Chu Xiu. But now that he was in the illusion, Chu Xiu felt very unfamiliar. Surrounding him were palaces, green trees and flowers, looking extremely beautiful. Chu Xiu took a closer look. Wasn't this the current appearance of the blissful demon palace? It was just that there weren't any flowers or trees. The young man from before came out of one of the palaces with a bamboo flute in his hand. At this moment, he no longer had the ferocious look of a hungry ghost. There was a gentle smile on his face, and even his skin color had returned to normal. Chu Xiu looked at the young man coldly and frowned. You're the one who pulled me into the illusion? I've underestimated you. The young man shook his head and said, I wasn't the one who pulled you in, but you yourself. Because you've devoured too many hungry ghost spirits. And those spirits are from the same source as me. That's why you're here. The art of heart demon rotation you cultivate is actually a secret cultivation method of the blissful demon palace. A few hundred years ago, I can't remember when it was, but at that time, there was also a demonic cultivator who came here and took the art of heart demon rotation from the armory in front of me. He didn't seem to be interested in the other cultivation methods, so he didn't take them. That person cultivated a variety of cultivation methods, very similar to you. Taoism, Buddhism, and demonic, all of them. He was so powerful that it made people tremble. Even in my era, he was an expert who stood at the peak. Chu Xiu's heart stirred, and he said, that person was Dugu Weiwei? Mei Qinglian had once said that Dugu Weiwei had also entered the Xiaofan heaven, and obtained many benefits from it, creating a peerless demonic cultivation method. After the great calamity of the ancient era, there were quite a few powerful figures of the demonic Tao. However, other than Dugu Weiwei, Chu Xiu couldn't think of anyone else who could be considered a peak expert even in the ancient era. The young man smiled bitterly and shook his head. When that expert came, he didn't see my true self, but the hungry ghost version of me. I'm just a half-human, half-ghost thing. How could I be qualified to talk to that expert? So I don't even know that expert's name. Looking at Chu Xiu, the young man said, You don't have to be wary of me. I'm different from that demon outside. Moreover, since I've awakened, I don't intend to continue living. I just want to find someone to talk to before I die, and I'll give you some things while I'm at it. Chu Xiu asked doubtfully, You're not the same person as the body outside? Who exactly are you? The young man spread his hands and said, I'm Yu Xian, a direct disciple of the blissful demon palace. I'm also an anomaly of the blissful demon palace, and even an abandoned disciple. As for that demon outside, he's indeed me, but also not me. Anyway, it's a long story. Looking at the surrounding palaces and pavilions, Yu Xian sighed. The hungry ghost Tao's secret art is against the harmony of the world. Do you think my blissful demon palace is very evil? Chu Xiu said expressionlessly. I cultivate the demonic path, but also the Buddhist path. The martial path is just a kind of power. The Buddhist path is yang, and the demons are yin. The demonic path doesn't mean that it's inhumane. In any case, I've never heard of any demonic cultivator who became famous in the pugilistic world by slaughtering the innocent. Power is just a method. Those who lose themselves in power for the sake of obtaining power are either lunatics or weaklings. Those who take the initiative to refine this hungry ghost incarnation, rather than calling them devils, it would be better to call them demons. Yu Xian smiled bitterly and said, That's right. They disregard everything for the sake of obtaining power, but in fact, they've already lost themselves in power. You're not a martial artist from the ancient times, so you don't know how powerful the Six Paths Demon Venerable was, and how amazing he was. His Six Paths incarnation secret art is also a fusion of the Taoist, Buddhist, and demonic scriptures. His strength is even second to the demonic path's supreme expert who entered here hundreds of years ago. Once he's able to refine the Six Paths incarnation, he might really be able to rival that demonic path's supreme expert. However, the Six Paths Demon Venerable was too overboard, so all the experts in the pugilistic world joined forces to besiege him. Not just the righteous path, but even the demonic path. Because the Six Paths Demon Venerable wanted to refine the Azura incarnation, he once slaughtered the demonic path. Many people died in that battle, including the Six Paths Demon Venerable, but the hungry ghost Tao's secret art was obtained by my blissful demon palace. I suggested Master to destroy the secret art, but more people wanted to refine the hungry ghost Tao's incarnation in secret. Because in that battle, even a half-finished hungry ghost Tao's incarnation caused great damage to those who participated in that battle. Because they saw the power and terror of the hungry ghost Tao's incarnation, they desired that power even more. Chu Xiu frowned and said, So in the end they didn't listen to you? Yu Xian nodded with a bitter smile and said, Yes, Master didn't listen to me, and almost no one else supported me. They didn't want to destroy such a powerful secret art, so they secretly refined the Hungry Ghost Tao's incarnation. As for me, because I tried to persuade them many times, even Master started to hate it. As a punishment, I even had to feed the hungry ghost, staying with the things I hated the most all day long. Chu Xiu said lightly, but in the end, you chose to become a hungry ghost, an existence like those monsters. There were no saints in this world, and Chu Xiu did not believe that there were saints in this world. Everyone had their own selfish desires. Even Master Tamuan, who had once imparted the sun-changing art to Chu Xiu, had walked step by step from an ordinary monk to a holy monk. Yu Xian was a person of the demonic path. No matter how kind he was, it was impossible for him to be so innocent. The bitter smile on Yu Xian's face deepened. He said in a self-deprecating manner, "Yes, I'm actually afraid of death. I regret it now. If I hadn't disobeyed Master back then, I wouldn't have ended up like this. I thought they would come back for me, but they didn't. The Bliss Demon Palace's array formation was sealed, and I couldn't get out. If I wanted to live, I could only think of other ways. Transforming into a hungry ghost would make me immortal for thousands of years. Coupled with sufficient blood and sleep, living for 10,000 years wouldn't be a problem. It was just a momentary lapse of thought that led me down the path of evil. After becoming a hungry ghost, I was no longer me. My intelligence was gradually eroded, and in the end, I split into another hungry ghost personality. My original self could only hide in the depths of my soul. If you hadn't used your essence soul secret technique to completely invade my mind, I probably wouldn't have the chance to see a living person for the rest of my life. I've always been very afraid of death, but only now do I know that what's more terrifying than death is living a life worse than death. Your essence soul secret technique has actually severely injured the hungry ghost personality. I've also temporarily obtained the rights to manage this body. I'll end my own life in a while, but this is a joyous occasion. I'm finally free. As a token of my gratitude, I'll give you something." "What is it?" Chu Xiu asked. Yu Xian said in a deep voice, "The Hungry Ghost Tao's incarnation. A true incarnation of the Hungry Ghost Tao, and also the last incarnation of the Hungry Ghost Tao in this world." Chu Xiu raised his brows and said, "It's this thing that caused you to become like this, and you still want to give it to me now. However, I don't want to become like you. I don't mind being a demon, but at the same time, I want to be a human." Yu Xian shook his head and said, "What harmed me was not the Hungry Ghost Tao's secret technique, but human greed. Furthermore, the true Hungry Ghost Tao's secret technique only refines an incarnation, and not your original body that's neither human nor ghost like me. Those hungry ghosts and ferocious creatures in the outside world, as well as my original body, are actually just half-finished products." Chapter 565. No one had actually seen what the Hungry Ghost Tao incarnation looked like, as even the Six Paths Demon Lord had never successfully refined it. Yu Xian stared at Chu Xiu and said, "The essence of the Hungry Ghost Tao incarnation lies in devouring its own kind, and finally turning yourself into the strongest hungry ghost, becoming the true Hungry Ghost Tao that devours everything. Although you're not a hungry ghost, there's a strange thing in your body that can digest the soul blood of hungry ghosts, and even devour their mental strength. You've already digested the soul blood, so you can't condense a Hungry Ghost Tao with a physical body. However, you can sacrifice your mental strength to the Hungry Ghost Tao, and make it yours. You've already killed all the hungry ghosts here, and you've condensed enough soul blood of hungry ghosts. The reason why it hasn't evolved into the true Hungry Ghost Tao is because you haven't integrated the true Hungry Ghost Tao's secret technique into your body. I'll give it to you later, but I'll only give you the method to condense the Hungry Ghost Tao, not the method to refine these hungry ghosts and the most crucial formation patterns. From now on, you'll be the first possessor of the Hungry Ghost Tao in this world, but at the same time, you'll be the last possessor of the Hungry Ghost Tao in this world." With that, Yu Xian raised the bamboo flute in his hand and wanted to blow it, sending Chu Xiu out of the illusion. However, at that moment, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Wait, I still have a question for you." Yu Xian was stunned. "What is it?" What exactly was the great ancient calamity? This question had been bothering Chu Xiu for a long time. It could be said that everyone in the pugilistic world wanted to know. Shui Wuxiang and the others had been sealed before the great ancient calamity, so they didn't know anything about it at all. However, Yu Xian was someone from the end of the great ancient era, so he definitely knew about it. In the end, Yu Xian smiled bitterly and shook his head. I really don't know. Before the great calamity of ancient times started, I heard some rumors, but I was imprisoned because I disobeyed my master. I was punished to feed those hungry ghosts. I was expelled from the center of the blissful demon palace, and they didn't tell me anything. When the great ancient calamity began, I had already transformed into a hungry ghost, and was in a deep slumber. By the time I woke up, the great ancient calamity had already ended. Everywhere was desolate, and the space where the bliss demon palace resided had even been severed. Actually, I really want to know what happened back then. Chu Xiu furrowed his brows tightly. Things were stuck here again. It was really depressing. By the way, do you know the names of the 3 Pristines Temple and the Lingbao Temple? Yu Xian was stunned and said, Of course I know. The 3 Pure Palace is the supreme of the Dao sect. The cultivation of the 3 great celestial venerables already stands at the pinnacle of the Jianghu, transcending mortality and entering sainthood, like immortals and gods. The Lingbao Temple is one of the 3,000 Dao sects. Although they don't have many people, they are extremely powerful. The Lingbao Temple's secret technique, the Lingbao Light, is said to be able to destroy any divine weapon. None of the disciples from the Lingbao Temple are mediocre. The temple master of the Lingbao Temple, Immortal Linggu, is one of the rare powerhouses in the world. Although he keeps a low profile, his cultivation is close to the 3 great celestial venerables. He has condensed 360 Lingbao lights in his true martial core, and divine weapons and sharp divine weapons are like scrap iron in front of him. Chu Xiu heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that his previous guess was correct. The 3 Pristines Palace was extraordinarily powerful, and that seemingly small Taoist temple was actually a well-known existence in ancient times. Chu Xiu still wanted to say something, but Yu Xian's expression changed slightly at this moment. There's not much time left. If we delay any longer, then my hungry ghost personality will awaken. As soon as he finished speaking, Yu Xian played the bamboo flute in his hand. The illusion in front of him was destroyed, and Chu Xiu returned to reality in an instant. In the illusion, Chu Xiu and Yu Xian talked for a long time. However, that was in the illusory world of mental power. In the real world, only an instant had passed. On the other side, Daoist Guangning and the other 2 were still attacking the hungry ghost Yu Xian. Because of Chu Xiu's secret technique, Yu Xian was forced to retreat step by step. However, at this moment, Yu Xian's eyes revealed a trace of clarity. The corpse qi around him burned wildly, and he charged towards Chu Xiu at the cost of his origin energy. If Daoist Guangning and the others wanted to block this level of power, they would definitely be injured. Therefore, other than Daoist Guangning, who subconsciously used the yin-yang duality sword formation to block and failed, the other 2 actually dodged immediately. They thought that this hungry ghost Yu Xian hated Chu Xiu to the core. Therefore, he didn't even care about his origin energy to kill Chu Xiu. In the face of such a desperate existence, Yu Qifeng and Huangfu Weiming certainly didn't want to forcefully block it. Even if Chu Xiu was killed later, the monster's vitality would certainly be greatly damaged. Anyway, they wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Yu Xian's body that was burning with endless corpse qi arrived in front of Chu Xiu. His eyes revealed a trace of relief, and his body suddenly exploded. A drop of extremely dense black soul blood integrated into Chu Xiu's body. Actually, Chu Xiu was still a little vigilant at the beginning. This Yu Xian said a lot, but in fact, Chu Xiu was still half believing and half doubting. He was a suspicious person to begin with. Even if it was those Buddhist monks from the righteous path, Chu Xiu wouldn't completely believe them, not to mention Yu Xian, who was from the demonic path. Therefore, from the beginning, Chu Xiu gathered all of his mental strength. Once he felt something was wrong, he would immediately expel that drop of soul blood from his body. Moreover, Chu Xiu had another layer of insurance, and that was the glass golden thread gu. The glass golden thread gu only had instincts and didn't have intelligence. Therefore, it would naturally reject any malicious things that entered Chuxio's body. Chuxio's body was equivalent to the glass golden thread Gu's home. In his own home, he wouldn't allow any malicious things to exist. However, contrary to Chuxio's expectations, this Yuxian really didn't do anything to the soul blood. He simply wanted to be free, and before he was free, he wanted to give Chuxio, the person who accompanied him on his last journey, a gift. That drop of extremely dense soul blood integrated into Chuxio's primordial spirit. However, this time, the soul blood wasn't devoured by the glass golden thread Gu. That drop of extremely dense soul blood integrated into one with the black mental strength that Chuxio obtained from killing the hungry ghost. In the end, it turned into the appearance of a ferocious hungry ghost. This ravenous ghost's appearance was slightly different from the ravenous ghosts that Chuxio had killed earlier. Although the general appearance was the same, with a large head, mouth and swollen abdomen, its skin was pitch black, and it gave off an extremely sinister aura. Moreover, the hungry ghost's head had a pair of sharp horns that were as black as ink, which made the hungry ghost's appearance even more ferocious. At the same time, a piece of information appeared in Chuxio's mind. It was a method to use the hungry ghost Dao incarnation, but it didn't include the method to refine the hungry ghost Dao incarnation. In fact, what Chuxio currently possessed wasn't a complete hungry ghost Dao incarnation, because it only had a spirit and not a powerful body. However, this didn't matter to Chuxio. Even if Yuxian gave Chuxio the method to create the hungry ghost Dao incarnation, Chuxio wouldn't use such a method that went against the harmony of heaven, and was laborious and unrewarding. Just look at what happened to the demon lord of six paths in the past. He was truly angered by both humans and gods, and he was killed by the combined forces of Taoism, Buddhism, and demon Dao. At this moment, Chuxio also looked at Yu Qifeng and the other two, and sneered. The three of you dodged really fast. Yu Qifeng and the others had never thought that the fellow would be so useless when he had already begun to burn his origin energy. He seemed like he was about to throw his life on the line. He had already begun to burn his origin energy, but who would have thought that he would be so useless? He had actually used up all of his origin energy and self-destructed. However, apart from Taoist Guangning, who was a little guilty, Yu Qifeng and Huangfu Weiming seemed to be indifferent. Having cultivated to their level and status, most of them had gathered the two characteristics of being shameless and being shameless. In a situation where there were benefits or danger, it was fine to be a little shameless. In the outside world, it was fine to be a little shameless in public. After all, they had to protect their dignity as martial Dao masters, and the sect behind them. However, given the situation just now, it was better for them to be a little shameless. Taoist Guangning coughed and changed the topic. Now that the monster is dead, the blissful demon palace should be safe. We just need to be careful of the formation. Everyone, let's do it. Let's see what good stuff is left in the blissful demon palace. Previously, they thought that the blissful demon palace was not damaged. But now, it seemed that the blissful demon palace was still damaged. It was just that the monster had repaired it after the great ancient calamity. Therefore, most of the good stuff in the blissful demon palace had probably been damaged. This was not good news. However, just as everyone was about to start plundering the blissful demon palace, there was a commotion from behind. More than 10 martial artists entered one after another, and there were even martial Dao master level energy waves. Yu Qifeng's expression suddenly changed. He looked at Taoist Guangning and said in a low voice, "Old Taoist, you didn't reseal the formation?" Generally speaking, for a relic like this that was sealed by an array formation, the people who had entered before would definitely seal the array formation directly after entering. Otherwise, if the things that they had painstakingly obtained were stolen by others, wouldn't that be bad luck? Therefore, Yu Qifeng thought that Taoist Guangning had resealed the formation. He didn't know much about formations, so he thought that Taoist Guangning had already done so long ago. Taoist Guangning glared at him and said, "I can reseal other formations, but this blissful demon palace's formation is very complete. It's completely different from the current formation. If I want to reseal it, it will take me a day. Can you afford to wait?" You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.